Hey guys, how are all of you beautiful people? Hope all of you are doing great. And yes, this is the next part of my Pokemon world. We're the story following the birth of the strongest trainer to ever walk the planet. Going region by region, league by league, champion by champion in order to chase after his ever-fleeting sense of accomplishment. Fans scream out his name every time he enters the arena. Opponents forfeit when they meet his gaze, his combat style, unforgiving to even the smallest of mistakes. Soaring above the sky itself, his figure fades from the eyes of all those who he has defeated, never to catch up. So let's start without any delay. Zoom. Rex was currently speeding off towards Saffron City, which was en route to Vermilion. The whole trip would take about 2 days if he did nothing but ride all day, which was the plan. It was about time Onix and Scyther evolved. And there was nothing to do in between. His Pokemon could rest and chill out for 2 days since it wouldn't be detrimental. With that in mind, he leaned forward and increased the speed of his motorcycle. *****. Elisa was standing on the balcony of her room overlooking the ocean. The sea breeze made her velvety black hair dance. She had a smile on her face as she stared out into the vast expanse of water. But suddenly the sound of a phone ringing could be heard. The interruption caused her mood to plummet, but when she thought that it might be Rex, she smiled again and skipped towards it. But a frown quickly took over when she saw the ID. She reluctantly picked up and heard the voice of an aged-old man. "Sweetie, how are you?" he asked in a doting tone. "Don't sweetie me, Dad. What do you want?" she said in a serious tone. The man on the other side laughed before speaking again. "Since you're not in the mood for sugarcoating it, you need to come home. I'm tired of your little game. Running away from home. What are you, 12? Do you think escaping your problems will make them magically disappear?" he asked in a serious tone, vastly different from the warm one just a second ago. "Funny, is that how you see it? I'm not running away from my problems, I'm running away from you. Who the fuck marries their daughter off for their own gain?" she shouted. "This is for our family's prosperity. This is not an uncommon sight amongst the higher social circles. It will bring you and our family benefits. Your sisters won't have to go through the same fate if you accept," he said. But Elisa was shaking with rage when she heard that. It was a blatant threat. He was actually willing to blackmail his own daughter using her sister's well-being and future. "You wouldn't dare. Do you have no soul? How can you do this to your daughters?" she yelled as tears welled up in her eyes. "Me? I didn't do anything. It's your selfishness that's forcing me to do this. Make your choice. You have until the end of this week to decide. The wedding will be held at the end of the year," he said before hanging up. Elisa stared at her phone in shock and anguish. She dropped to her knees and wept silently. She was being forced to marry someone she didn't like. All for the economical stability their union would provide. She was essentially being sold in exchange for money. And she didn't have a way out. If she refused, her sisters would be next on the chopping block. She came here to get stronger so that she could have more of a say in her matters. But even with Zapdos, she wasn't confident. As she sat there dejectedly, all her Pokemon sprang out from their Pokeballs and huddled around her with worried faces. Luxray rubbed her cheek against Elisa's. Electivire patted her back with a stupid smile. Zebstrika stood back and watched with a worried look, and Zapdos was off to the side with a frown. It had heard their conversation. Zapdos was a very intelligent Pokemon. It knew that its new master was in trouble. But it couldn't find a way of fixing it. Maybe if it had the strength of that Pokémon. But it shook its head and sat there in contemplation. Elisa smiled unconsciously when she saw what her Pokémon were doing and got up off the floor. I'll just have to get stronger in order to free myself and my sisters from our chains, she mumbled to herself. Yet her self-mocking smile never left her face. She knew it wasn't possible in such a short time. But she needed to try. A familiar face suddenly appeared in her mind. She sighed, if only I wasn't in this mess. Maybe, never mind, she said to herself as a tear slid down her face. Zapdos heard her clearly and thought about who she was talking about. It had been constantly hearing about this strong trainer she was going to battle, and every time she mentioned it, she would smile brilliantly. This puzzled it, but now hearing what she said, it thought that maybe that trainer could help. It would make a mental note to do something about it when they met. Thank you, guys, for cheering me up. We will be heading for Fuchsia City next. We will be meeting up with an old friend. Zebstrika, you know him well, she said with a slight smile. But Zebstrika shivered intensely when it heard that name and cowered underneath the bed sheets. Zapdos was even more intrigued to see this, since Zebstrika had always been quite arrogant whenever it saw him. Why was it now acting like this? Zebstrika, noticing Zapdos's stare, came forward and told it what happened with shaking legs. Zapdos was stunned to hear this. What monstrous power! And this had been a couple of weeks ago. A lot can happen in that time. It was starting to look forward to the battle. Elisa noticed their little talk and Zapdos's battle intent and couldn't help but jump with excitement. Rex, you're in for a shock, she said with an evil grin before giggling. Her gloomy mood disappeared instantly and she skipped out of her room to get some food for herself and her Pokémon. 2 days later. Vroom. The sound of a monster engine could be heard through the streets of Vermilion City. Rex had just arrived in the morning and was making his way to the steel factory with much eagerness. He had finished the research on Onyx's evolution. He had also been called by Professor Oak, notifying him that he had procured a Klinklang. This all made Rex incredibly excited. The expected evolutionary result from the experiment should create a monster. With no further ado, Rex accelerated with a wheelie and sped forward. 10 minutes later he arrived at the steel factory and walked in with brisk steps, where the manager was waiting for him with a wide smile. "Ah, my dear customer, just in time. The materials you ordered have just been unloaded. Would you like to see them?" he asked with a wide smile. "Of course, lead the way," he reciprocated with his own smile and raised his hand in an inviting gesture. The man nodded and waddled forward as his stomach giggled. He looked like the typical greedy manager. And Rex was definitely sure that he was going to try and get more money than the products were worth. But he didn't mind, since he had money to burn. It did seem wasteful, and he could circumvent the problem by intimidating the man, but he was in a good mood. So, ruining it like that would be a crime. And just as they arrived at a secluded area, a massive container could be seen filled to the brim with metals and a medium-sized box filled with diamonds. And just as he expected, the man began to run his mouth, making excuses about this and that and why it would cost more than estimated. Rex simply smiled, nodded and transferred the money. A full 200k more than it was initially priced at. The man had trouble hiding his horrendous grin, which was unsightly to look at considering the grease on his face. Probably from the food he was eating before. "How would you like to transport this?" he asked with a smile. "We have services available if you No need, he said with a smile and walked towards the container. The man's jaw dropped when the entire container disappeared out of thin air. Rex had stored it in his inventory. He didn't care that he was seen since there was nothing to prove it. He had long corrupted the footage of his visit and turned off the cameras. "Thank you for your services," he said with a nod and walked past the man. "Thank you for your patronage," the man responded with a stiff smile. When Rex had left, a group of men in black with a letter R walked in with complacent smiles. The man grinned when he saw them. "Glad you're here, there is a massive deal I just completed, and the man just left. You can still catch up to him. Rob him and you can take half. Out of respect for your boss," he said with a smile. The grunts smiled even wider when they heard that and nodded before leaving. The man looked in the direction that Rex had left in and smiled. "You can only blame yourself for being blind." On a bike, Rex smiled mockingly. He had seen everything through the cameras, including the words of the fat man. He couldn't help but sigh slightly. Why was Team Rocket everywhere? It was getting annoying. "After I finish with Fuchsia, I'll level the Team Rocket base and be done with it," he thought to himself. He left the city and headed east since there was no road directly south towards Fuchsia. He also noticed the grunts following him, which he pretended to ignore. As soon as he was a bit away from the city, he pulled over and leaned on his bike while casually throwing a pokeball up and down repeatedly. Soon, a group of 5 came into view on black bikes. When they saw that he was waiting for them, they felt a bad premonition. "Machamp, just like the good old days, break their legs," he said with a sadistic smile. His words weren't heard by the rocket grunts, but when they saw the afterimage of a 4-meter-tall monster, they paled. Yet it was too late. Their lives were no longer in their hands. 4 of them were plucked off of their bikes and the 5th one was kicked to the ground. Machamp held one grunt by the neck in each hand and grinned savagely. Strong, weak, the line is often blurred due to arrogance and overconfidence. That happens when one is not faced with challenges constantly. They stagnate, and people like you are born. A complete and utter disappointment is what you have become. And then I'm forced to clean out the trash. Such a chore," Rex said as he walked over. He stomped on the chest of the grunt on the ground and a muffled crack could be heard. He had just shattered the man's ribs. The man began to spit up blood with bubbles in it. This was a sign that his lungs had been pierced. "You should really learn to mind your own fucking business, you monkey." Rex spat before pressing his foot further, effectively going straight through him. Rex held direct eye contact with the grunt as his eyes lost their light. Rex then turned towards the other 4 that were shivering like leaves amidst a hurricane. One of them even gave off the smell of urine, which made Rex frown deeply. "You fucking animal," he cursed. "Machamp, crush their necks. Fuck breaking their legs." He then pointed at the one that pissed his pants. "You ruined my peaceful mood, you fuck." He yelled and stormed off like a kid who had his lollipop stolen. Wait. You're killing us because we ruined your mood," one of the grunts yelled. Rex paused and turned around. "No shit, if you simply stayed still and allowed me to break your legs, you would have survived, but now, you soured my mood. So, you can go to hell," he said before continuing towards his bike. The screams of the 4 could be heard for a moment before they were cut off abruptly as the sound of something cracking accompanied it. "Now for that fat fuck," Rex said as he slid the helmet visor over his face. Machamp patted his shoulders to rid himself of the dust and returned to his pokeball. Boom! The metal hangar doors the size of floodgates were smashed to pieces and caved in as 4 glowing orange fists pierced through. A silhouette of a man and a giant could be seen walking in. "I'll make this short and simple. Where is the manager? If you can do that, I would be very thankful," he said in a loud and clear voice. The workers who were shocked stiff-sighed in relief, and one of them stepped forward and pointed at an office. "Thank you, Machamp," he said without looking at his Pokémon. Machamp grinned and shot out from the ground and crashed into the office. The screams of the manager rung out and echoed through the now silent steel factory. Machamp landed with a ground-trembling thud with another man dangling from his right hand. "We meet again, manager. I thought we were on good terms. To think that you would backstab me and attempt to rob me. That hurt my feeling, you know that?" he asked, his voice becoming pained and sorrowful. Everyone believed it for a moment before seeing the menacing smile on his face that showed anything but sadness. When the manager heard that voice, he paled and began to shake. "Oh. It seems you know your sins," he said before grabbing the man by the neck and holding him up. He then leaned in until he was very close and whispered, "Do you fear death? Do you fear that dark abyss? All your deeds laid bare, all your sins punished?" he asked, his grin widening even further. Dark red aura seeped out of his body which formed into the face of a devil. Everyone began to shiver and cower away when they saw that. Even Machamp began to shiver slightly at the sight. Unaware of his change, Rex continued to stare at the man waiting for an answer. I do," the fat man answered while continuing to shake even more intensely. Rex smiled. "Then I'll let your soul rot in the depths of hell," he said and crushed the man's neck with his bare hand. The body fell limply to the ground and so did the head before beginning to roll for a couple of meters. Rex stared at his blood-stained hand with a frown. "Anyone got a rag or cloth to clean my hand? I dirtied it with this monkey's blood," he asked as he looked around. A man who seemed to be very brave got up off the floor and walked towards Rex before handing him a cloth. "Machamp, please do me a favor and burn the body, please," he asked. Machamp came forward and burned the body to ash before returning to his spot. "Thanks. I'll be taking over this steel factory. You will not be losing your jobs. You will even get a 50% raise. As for you," he said as he looked at the man in front of him, "you will take the position of manager. I'll be making some improvements to the machines and tech you are using to increase efficiency. If you need anything, call me. As for now, keep working as you do." He finished, handed the man a number and walked out the door. Everyone was standing there speechless. That guy just walked in, killed a guy, took over the factory and walked out. After a brief silence, the whole place erupted into cheers. "We're getting a massive raise, lads. Beers on me tonight," yelled one of the men. Everyone cheered even louder when they heard that. Asterisk clap asterisk asterisk clap asterisk. "Everyone, go back to work. We can't slack off," yelled the man who handed the cloth to Rex. Nobody complained and instantly returned to their jobs. Rex, who was monitoring them through the cameras, nodded contentedly. "System award that man with 100,000. Next, hack into the company that owns the steel factory and make them sell. I don't care how you do it. I want it done as quickly as possible. If you have to, drown them in money. After all, man's greed is boundless," he said in a hushed voice as he walked down the street to his bike. "Got it. The factory is owned by Mining Incorporated. There are similar factories in every region. It commented. Is it profitable to invest? He asked. It is. Steel and metals are always in high demand. Owning the company itself would be a better move, it recommended. Then do it. I don't care what you do, find dirt, blackmail them, I want the majority of the shares for their company in my pocket as soon as possible. He said sternly. Sure. That won't be a problem, the company seems to be under stress due to rivaling companies and financial problems. Both can be exploited. Estimated time until the host is the new biggest shareholder. 2 days and 15 hours, it analyzed. Perfect, he said while nodding and headed to the Pokémon Center. He forgot about getting the Kling-Klang from Oak. It had slipped his mind in his excitement. Luckily those idiots gave him the chance to come back. Upon arrival, he headed to a nearby PC and logged in before calling the professor. Asterisk beep asterisk asterisk beep asterisk asterisk beep asterisk. Oh. Rex, perfect timing, I was just about to call you. I have it right here in this Pokeball. Do you want it now? He asked. Yes, Professor, thank you again. When I'm done with the league, I have a massive business deal I would like you to be a part of. Rex mentioned with a wide grin. Oh. That sounds interesting. I'm up for hearing what you have to offer. I've sent it now. Did you receive it? He asked. Asterisk pop asterisk. A ball materialized in the circular slot next to the computer. Yes, I did. Thank you again. I'll be seeing you in a while. He waved and ended the call. Rex held the Pokeball in his hand and smiled even brighter. This is going to be epic. He mumbled and hopped onto his bike and headed east again. A day later a pond came into view off to the side of the dirt road Rex was traveling on. He had been going down Route 11 before heading down to Route 13 and continued down until he reached Fuchsia. He hadn't met with any trouble on the way and battled a couple of trainers only to sweep them with single attacks. He realized that there was no point in continuing to battle random trainers since his Pokémon got nothing out of it. During the night, the system would put his body to sleep while his mind continued to battle in the simulation center. He continued to struggle bitterly on the easiest mode. He couldn't understand how this was classified as easy mode. The trainers were insanely powerful, not only Pokémon-wise but their tactics and vision over the battlefield were ingenious. He learned massive amounts of knowledge and tactics that he could later implement into his own battles. He realized what the system was trying to do soon after and stopped complaining and began to train even harder. This all tied back to the trainers he battled. Not only was his Pokémon too strong, but Rex was also getting bored. He was coming up with ways to beat them before they even launched their second move. None of the people he had battled yesterday was able to get past the second move. It was tragic but understandable. Not a lot of people were strong enough or smart enough to become top-tier trainers. Heck, the ones that were shown to be strong in the anime, trained in one region, never ventured out. It was understandable. It's incredibly time-consuming to train a new team and expect it to be league-worthy. Ash was very impressive in this. So even though he was currently a trash trainer, he held hope that, unlike the anime, Ash would learn, and he wouldn't become a much better trainer. Unlike the anime where he's reset every region to be a dickhead. Well, he could only hope. Since if that was the case, he would be severely disappointed. Casting away those thoughts, he sat on the grass by the pond and enjoyed the rays of the sun as they hit his face. He spent an hour like this before getting back on track. A couple of hours later he entered Route 13. He hadn't been here before, so he was interested to see if there were anything that caught his attention. He was also getting ready to evolve both Onyx and Scyther. He was just double-checking in case there was any fault with the research data. And like that, another day went by. Early in the morning, all of Rex's Pokémon were huddled in a circle as they looked at Scyther, who was about to evolve. Everyone was excited to see what he would turn into. Scyther himself was holding his excitement back with all his might, but Rex noticed it by the incessant fidgeting he was doing. His little actions made Rex laugh a little. There were several processes he needed to do. He got Scyther to lay down on a thick sheet of tungsten and placed diamonds and small chunks of tungsten on his scythe arms. He placed carbon fiber on his chest, which he bought previously, and small volcanic rocks he found on Cinnabar Island on several parts of his body. Finally, Rex took out a metal coat and held it in his hands. Onyx and Scyther stared at it hungrily as if it was the most important thing in their lives. After witnessing the power all of their brothers had received, they wanted it too. Scyther was shaking slightly with impatience. Rex nodded in understanding and slowly placed the metal coat on Scyther's chest. As soon as the metal coat made contact, a massive explosion occurred and a molten ball of fire and metal shrouded Scyther and lifted him into the air. It looked like the core of a planet. All of his Pokémon stepped back while Rex and Machamp stepped forward, nodded to the other, and thrust their hands forward. A thick bubble made of an invisible aura was formed to protect the surroundings from the increasingly volatile evolution. Onyx was looking on with extreme fervor. He was next and he couldn't wait to see what Scyther and he would turn into. Back to Scyther, it began to howl in pain as the bubble of molten metal increased in size. The ground began to melt, and the air seemed to solidify as a rain of metal began to descend. The very thought of it was mind-boggling. This was simply going against every preconceived notion. Metal rain. Who would ever think that was possible? As they all looked on, Scyther was experiencing massive changes. Its arms grew and grew before starting to hook. They looked like massive sickles with a serrated edge on the inside. Its color changed drastically. As if absorbing the heat, his color changed from green to red and black. Some places kept their green color, but it intensified into a fluorescent green. His body began to lose its distinctive insect form. It kept its abdomen, which is commonly seen in bugs, but its legs lost their inverted anatomy. But the biggest change was the one happening on his back. His wings began to glow and change shape as they shortened and widened. They became something similar to a jetpack. Blue flames shot out from the two exhausts, which sounded like thunder. When the bubble burst, a massive torrent of hot air and metal shot out in all directions, colliding with the ground and barrier. The good thing was that Machamp and Rex had been working together, so they were able to stop it. Scizor hovered in the air for a few moments before descending back towards the ground. As his foot touched the floor, the flames shooting out from the miniature jet engines strapped to his back began to melt the floor. Noticing this, Scizor turned it off and stood there calmly as he inspected his body curiously. A cold glint could be seen on his sickle-like arms. A passing leaf happened to collide with it and was instantly cut, which shocked Rex and his other Pokémon. The sharpness was terrifying. Rex then inspected Scizor to see his new stats. *ding. Name: Scizor, the Death Scythe Pokémon. O Ancient DNA status: locked. O Type: Bug/Steel. O Level: 40. O Bond: 91%. O Height: 2.5 m. O HP: 213. O Attack: 360. O Defense: 250. O SP: ATK, 180. OSP. Definite, 230. O speed, 300. O ability, Protean, death by scythe. O moves A, counter, night slash, furry cutter, focus energy, tackle, leer, double team, X scissor, air slash, protect, aerial ace, steel wing, swords dance, roost, double kick, blazing scythe, ice scythe, thunder scythe, metal scythe, rock scythe, poison scythe, solar scythe, hydro scythe, air scythe, psychic scythe, dark scythe, fairy scythe, ground scythe, focus scythe, normal scythe, bug scythe, shadow scythe, dragon scythe. Rex was shocked when he saw the amount of moves Scissor had learned. But when he saw the commonality between all of them and the new abilities, he guessed that they were linked. He was also immensely happy to have such large coverage. "You know the drill system, explain the ability," he said in his head. The Death by Scythe ability boosts the attack stat by 1.5x and increased scythe move priority to +2, it explained. Rex jumped with joy. That was a massive reveal. That would mean that Scissor would be moving before his opponent would and would be landing moves much faster. And with the type of coverage his new moves provided, Scissor became a great Pokémon. That was not overlooking the 1.5x multiplying for his attack stat. It was like a nerfed huge power in a way. All of his Pokémon rushed forward and swarmed Scissor, asking him questions. Scissor was incredibly happy at the moment, and even though there was an aura around him that spelled death to any who got too close, Scissor acted friendly to all of his brothers. Machamp stood next to Rex with a smile. "What do you think?" asked Rex suddenly. Machamp didn't even turn his head and continued to observe his friends. "Strong, very strong. Dangerous as well. I like it," he commented. Rex nodded slightly before turning to Onyx, who had an impatient look on his face. "Onyx, this will be a very complex process, are you ready?" he yelled, which caught the attention of all his Pokémon. Onyx perked up and slithered over instantly before nodding his head vigorously. Rex nodded solemnly and instructed Onyx to lay down on a massive slab of thick tungsten. On certain parts of his body, diamonds were placed. Next, he pulled out a Pokeball and held it in his hands. This was where it got tricky. He would have to include Klinklang into the evolution somehow. That was what plagued his mind for days on end until the system created a device that was able to do just that. But the timing had to be just right. A bit later and both Pokémon could die, and too early and the evolution would fail and Onyx would be stuck in his base form forever, unable to evolve. So this process was nerve-wracking for Rex. Onyx laid there silently waiting for Rex to do the rest. The latter took a deep breath before throwing the metal coat straight towards Onyx. As soon as it hit his head, Onyx was immediately covered in a radiant light that soon turned completely grey and shiny. Once again, it began to heat up as the metal melted and covered Onyx's entire body. The diamonds fused with his body, and just as the next stage was about to continue, Rex threw out the Pokeball. Instantly Klinklang flew towards the glowing ball of light before beginning to get repelled. That was where Rex threw out the device, which instantly exploded, covering Klinklang in a weird substance that shrouded his body, allowing him to pass. Rex had no idea what the system had concocted, but he had no reason not to trust it. After all, they were bonded together for life. Instantly a radical change began to occur within the bubble of molten metal. Klinklang began to glow as well, as if it was going to evolve, only to dissipate and merge with Onyx. Gears began to appear on his body as he expanded. Pieces of hot metal shot into the sides of his body before a diamond placed itself at the tip. The segments of Onyx's body began to separate and reattached like pieces of a machine. Red energy glowed in between the parts. Onyx's head increased in size exponentially, becoming blocky and thick. His lower jaw grew and grew until a sort of underbite was formed. With a massive explosion, the bubble burst, revealing the monstrosity within. Rex held his arms wide with the biggest smile he had even shown. Ha ha ha. It worked. I did it. System, we did it. He yelled as he jumped around. His Pokémon didn't care about him as they looked at the massive Pokémon that stood 20 meters tall, looked down at them with a cold gaze. But something was wrong. Steelix mechanically opened his mouth as a red light amassed in his mouth. Machamp, seeing this happen, scoffed in disdain and flashed in front of his brothers just as the beam of red light shot out of his mouth. Machamp dismissively extended a hand out and took the brunt of the hit as if nothing happened. He didn't even move an inch from his initial position. Rex woke up from his mad scientist craze and freaked out slightly. System, what's happening? There seems to be a problem. Onyx's consciousness is fading rapidly. It will disappear in 30 seconds. I analyzed. Rex was shocked and slightly panicked before slapping himself incredibly hard. Calm yourself, Rex. Panicking will not help. System, what can be done? He asked. System can implement a light version of itself into the mech and combine it with Onyx's consciousness. It will stabilize Onyx, it said quickly. Rex was surprised. What are the consequences of such actions? He asked quickly. The system has analyzed that there are no harmful side effects. The light version would act like a stabilizer and a support system that can even provide assistance in battle. It will act as a supercomputer, it said quickly. Rex's thoughts spun at incredible speed. So what this means is that Onyx will have a support system that will keep him alive. Damn, what a mess. I actually endangered my friend's life. Luckily there's a solution and potentially even an upgrade out of this. With that in mind, he made a decision. Do it, do what you must, but save him. He said solemnly. Roger, the host must touch Steelix for the system to do its work. It said quickly. There were only about 10 seconds left before Onyx disappeared. Machamp, hold him down for a few seconds. He shouted. One of Machamp's arms pointed in his direction and gave him a thumbs up. The next second Steelix lunged forward only to be met with a merciless stomp, forcing his head into the ground where he was held there. Rex ran forward and placed his hand on Steelix's head, and the system sent a shockwave through his body. Steelix began to convulse slightly and stopped suddenly as if it had lost power. The red energy faded and a blue one sprang to life. He tried to lift his head only to be stopped by a glaring Machamp. That's enough, let it go, he should be fine now. He said to Machamp. He nodded and took his foot back, allowing Steelix to lift its head. He then looked around before looking down at Rex. Hello Master, thank you for saving me, said a deep but happy and joyful voice, much to the shock of everyone present. Rex was surprised but didn't find it shocking since Steelix was now a robot in a sense. How do you feel? He asked. Good, I felt really sleepy until a voice started talking to me and pulling me back. They told me that they were your friend, so I trust them. And here I am, he said happily. How's it looking, system? Everything is good, Rex. I can freely communicate with the light version in Steelix, and I have rather incredible news to tell you, it said with a shocked voice, which in turn shocked Rex. This was the first time he had heard the system sound shocked, so it must be something massive. Go on, tell me. He urged. Due to having become a mechanical existence, Steelix can now download battle records, assimilate them and learn from them at super speed. It has access to new moves and a source of unlimited energy only exhibited during evolution that is powering his core. In short, Steelix has the power to become the embodiment of destruction and chaos. Its learned ability is only second to mine since the light version is an abbreviated version of me. It informed. Rex was left shaking slightly at the words of the system when a thought appeared in his head and a stone in his hand. A massive grin appeared on his face. What would happen if I use this system? He asked. Potential to rival legacy level power. Not a legacy since Steelix is no longer qualified, it said simply. Why not? He asked with surprise. From the system's extensive research, bioorganic material needs to be present for a Pokémon to obtain a legacy. But Steelix doesn't need it. It is nigh indestructible and could easily earn the title of Legacy Destroyer. I could easily go toe-to-toe with Machamp in Legacy mode simply based on its defensive values. Would you like to incorporate the stone? It asked with slight traces of excitement. Even Rex was almost jumping in excitement at both the words the system had just said and at the image floating in his mind. Do it immediately. He yelled and threw the stone at Steelix, who instantly swallowed it. Machamp, be ready, this is about to get incredibly messy for you, he said with a sadistic grin. Machamp shivered slightly at the sight and turned incredibly serious as he stared at Steelix, who was once again undergoing massive changes. It coiled down on the floor and began to transform. Massive spine-like rods shot out of his back which glowed red at the tips, his body slimmed, and arms began to form from the revolving parts of metal. Then legs flowed. Steelix's iconic massive head changed and a dinosaur-like face took its place as two blood-red eyes shone through with malice. An alarm sounded from its body in rhythmic patterns. Asterisk beam beam asterisk beam beam asterisk asterisk beam beam asterisk. It slowly got to its feet before releasing an ungodly roar that shook the skies. Rex couldn't contain it anymore and spread his arms wide with a crazed look in his eyes. Beware the might of technology. The epitome of chaos, the killer of giants and slayer of gods. The one. The only. Mechagodzilla. Ha 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 ha. He bellowed with an insane look. All his Pokémon shivered intensely. Even Arcanine. Machamp, who was listening to Rex's insane introduction, frowned intensely. It had heard stories from Rex about this being. He thought it was simply stories and nothing more. All his Pokémon thought the same. They turned to look at Rex as if he was a god. He had brought back something that could rival Godzilla and King Kong from his stories. They were left shocked and frightened. Mechagodzilla, as if impressed with Rex's introduction, gave its signature roar from the movie that made the earth tremble and quake. The pure power radiating out of it like waves suffocated everyone. Rex was still cackling about like a mad scientist. Watch out, Machamp. Godzilla, use obliteration cannon. He bellowed madly. Machamp began to sweat from the name alone and instantly bubbled up and grew to 15 meters. His forearms grew and split again to form another pair before he took a fighting stance. He then bellowed with an insane expression mixed with battle intent, fury at being challenged, and excitement all bundled into one. Kuuuuumei! He shouted, making the ground crack. Every Pokémon in the area kneeled when he took on his god form. Rex still had his arms spread open. Let the battle of gods commence. An picture in the chapter comments. Godzilla charged up a massive amount of energy in his mouth. The spines that shot out of his back began to glow and flash. He then looked at Machamp and shot it out. The red light was blinding and incredibly penetrating. But it missed as if a strange force made his head move. It was Machamp's ability. Machamp grinned and flashed forward before grabbing Godzilla's head with both of his top hands and using Crush Grip. With his middle set of hands, he used Blast Cannon at point-blank range, and with his bottom pair of hands he used another Blast Cannon. The energy created a storm that spanned several kilometers as dark clouds swirled and lightning struck. Godzilla didn't have time to react before all three attacks hit him at once. Boom! He shot outwards from his standing position like a meteor and crashed into a nearby mountain, creating a massive crater. Machamp seemed to be fired up and taunted Godzilla by opening and closing his fist. From the smoke and dust, a pair of merciless and calculative eyes emerged, sending shivers down everyone's spine. Mechanical laughter rang out as a massive hand gripped the side of the crater before a metallic lizard emerged. Machamp shot forward for the same attack but was shocked at what happened. Godzilla moved his head back at the last second and jet engines emerged from his side, propelling him sideways before jumping up and smashing his fist down onto Machamp's face, sending him face first into the dirt. Everyone was shocked. His learning ability was immense. You can only do the same attack once before it learns a counter. As Godzilla was fighting, he was downloading recorded battles on the internet and analyzing them for strategies. It would then cross-reference them with the current battle to create the most optimal approach. With a strategy created to effectively destroy Machamp, Godzilla smashed his fists together, creating shockwaves before roaring again. It then jumped up slightly and shot forward with its jet engines and smashed his fist towards Machamp's face. Just as the fist was about to land, it was caught by Machamp. He then removed it from his line of sight and grinned sinisterly at Godzilla. His 5 other fists shot forward, one more caught Godzilla's other hand, one around his neck, 2 on his head. The final one flashed and caught the tail that was about to pierce through Machamp's head. With a grunt, Machamp jumped into the air and shot into the sky, breaking the sound barrier. When they were several hundred meters high, Machamp leaned back and began to spin as he fell. Rex smiled slightly at that. "Rock Lee, it seems your legacy lives on," he said with a chuckle as he put up a barrier to stop the blast from impacting the surroundings. Boom! The ground split and an earthquake spread outwards. Everyone in the region felt a slight tremor, with those who were closer feeling an intense shake. Machamp bounced back and stood at a safe distance as he stared at the bust cloud. Swoosh! A hand shot out and so did another as they gripped the side of the giant chasm they had created. A head slowly rose, covered in dirt and steam. Its eyes became so red they looked like blood as soft laughter echoed from its mechanical mouth. It was completely fine. Rex was really stunned. He was skeptical about the system's evaluation of him being unbreakable, but maybe he was. So, he decided to find out the limit. "Machamp, you don't have to hold back any longer, let's use our new moves, he said with an evil grin. Machamp grinned just as much, and instantly a suffocating pressure forced every living create to their knees in an instant within a 10-kilometer radius. "Rage in mode and use thunderclap and flash," he yelled ecstatically. He had been yearning to use this move for so long, but it was too dangerous. The last time he used it, a mountain was deleted in an instant. Machamp roared to the heavens as he began to glow with golden light. A massive blue thunderbolt in the shape of a dragon descended from the dark clouds above and revolved around Machamp before becoming his armor, a sword made of aura and lighting appearing in his hand. Billions of little shocks appeared all over his body as if he became the storm itself. Godzilla, who saw this, was computing a way to beat it but ended up with nothing. But it couldn't accept that. It could not afford to lose this battle. His roar boomed as it got into a defensive stance. It slammed its hands together and they transformed into a massive shield. The unstoppable spear and the unbreakable shield. Who shall be the winner? Rex bellowed as he spread his arms out. Machamp flashed and disappeared from his spot, leaving a massive shockwave in his wake. There was a flash of light that streaked across and Machamp appeared in front of Godzilla. They stood there as if nothing happened. But the sword in Machamp's hands shattered while the shield cracked. He 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 he. The mocking laughter of Mechagodzilla was eerie and chilling. Machamp was fuming, he couldn't accept this. Godzilla mimicked his previous action and taunted Machamp. Rex chuckled at the sight. He was also shocked at the durability. But that wasn't the end. As if the metal was living, it began to melt slightly before reforming into a perfectly fine shield. Machamp, Zeus's descent please, he said with a smile. Machamp was shocked at what he was being asked to do. But then a massive smile appeared on his face before nodding. Instantly hundreds of blue thunderbolts descended from the skies as Machamp spread his hands out. 6 thunderbolt-shaped weapons appeared in his hands, his armor became firmer compared to its illusory form from before and a massive flowing cape appeared on his back. It looked like it was made of light particles. Machamp then winded his hand back and shot one of the bolts of lightning forward towards Godzilla. He he he. Godzilla laughed again and smashed his hands together to create an even bigger shield that was pointy at the center. His feet dug into the ground and his tail straightened before stabbing into the floor like a steel beam for reinforcement. Swish. Boom. Like a meteor hitting the earth, the explosion instantly vaporized everything in the surroundings before hitting the aura shield. It instantly began to crack, which made Rex panic slightly. He couldn't let all this energy out or it would cause destruction for miles. Machamp, help me reinforce the barrier, he yelled at the top of his lungs. Instantly a wave of aura that wasn't from Rex spread out from within the cloud of smoke and superimposed itself over the pre-existing barrier. Due to Machamp being in God mode, his aura levels peaked, so his barrier was hundreds of times stronger. So, the force field was able to sustain the impact and contain the blast before releasing it upwards. Instantly a storm of smoke shot out from the opening and swirled around with the dark clouds further darkening the already dark skies. It was like a nuclear winter, not a single ray of sunlight was seeping through. But Rex didn't care about such things. He was currently preoccupied with finding out the result. That master bolt that resembled Zeus's weapon was simply electric with aura in it. It could also possess extra triangles. Boom crack boom. From within the smoke, the sound of gears could be heard as well as trees snapping, and loud thundering steps. Swoosh. A massive metal hand swung sideways, getting rid of the spoke to reveal the still intact visage of Mechagodzilla. Monster. Rex mumbled in utter shock. What kind of thing was he staring at? Why was it so tanky? He was shaking slightly with a massive grin on his face. He had finally gotten the spear and shield that he wanted. Just as they were about to resume, Rex lifted his hand lightly. That's enough, this was simply a battle to determine Steelix's defenses. Nothing more. You can both return to your normal modes, he said. Machamp nodded and reversed back to his four-armed mode. Steelix looked unwilling but complied in the end. Its body twisted and turned as gears spun and his arms folded into its body, followed by his legs. The mass they held was redistributed back to the head and body. He turned back into his metal serpent look. Rex then scanned him. Ding. Name, Macaw Steelix the Terminator Pokemon. O ancient DNA status, no longer available. O type, Steel/Electric. O level, 50. O bond, 100%. O height, 20 m. O HP, 300. O attack, 320. O defense, 600. OSP. ATK, 200. OSP. Definite, 600. O speed, 310. O ability, Mach superiority. O moves A, Sandstorm, Bite, Rollout, Rock Polish, Rock Slide, Sand Tomb, Stealth Rocks, Dig, Sand Golem. Disintegration Cannon. Energy Shield, Iron Bind, Sunsteel Strike, Metal Sound, Gear Grind, Shift Gear, Electric Terrain, Rising Voltage, Steel Roller, Iron Defense, Wild Charge, Thunder Wave, Memory Alloy. Rex was not too surprised with the stats since he had witnessed what his enhanced form can do. What he was stunned about were the moves. System: what does Memory Alloy do? The move is based on an alloy that can be deformed when cold but returns to its pre-deformed, remembered, shape when heated. It may also be called memory metal, memory alloy, smart metal, smart alloy, or muscle wire. This move allows Steelix to heat up his body and recover his HP by half. The move is boosted to recovering full health when in Godzilla form. Rex was shocked. A new type of recovery move is insane. That also explained what happened with Godzilla's shield when it got cracked. What about Energy Shield? What does that move do? It acts like Bide but also differs. It absorbs 10% of the damage and stores the kinetic energy of physical attacks and the energy from special attacks to power up Disintegration and Obliteration Cannon respectively. It stays active for 1 minute before it must be activated again. If either one of the cannon moves is launched without using Energy Shield prior, the power output is minimum, it explained. Rex shuddered at the thought. Obliteration Cannon was already insane and that was its weakest form. He realized that the power accumulated from constantly being attacked. The system didn't mention a limit of how much energy could be stored. A thought crossed his mind and Rex almost fainted. He was too scared to continue down this train of thought. Moving on, it seemed that he upgraded Sand Shield to Iron Shield but didn't for Sand Golem. He also got Disintegration Cannon, which was a nerfed version of the Obliteration Cannon, which made sense. He was excited about all the other moves since most of them came from Kling Klang, which was amazing. System: what does the ability do? He asked. The ability allows Steelix to negate the damage of any move that deals less than 1/7 of his defense or special defense stat respectively, 85. The damage that does go over will then be cut in half before finally affecting Steelix. Simply meaning, some moves with lower base output without stab and being super effective will not be able to hurt Steelix. The ones that are able to damage him will be halved. So, in the long run, taking down Steelix will prove to be nigh impossible, it explained. Rex nodded in understanding. Show me his stats while in Godzilla mode please. Ding. Name, Macaw Godzilla the Legacy Destroyer Pokemon. O ancient DNA status, no longer available. O type, Steel/Electric. O level, 50. O bond, 100%. O height, 20 m. O HP, 200. O attack, 450. O defense, 800. OSP. ATK, 450. OSP. Definite, 800. O speed, 310. O ability, McGod. O moves A, sandstorm, bide, roll out, rock polish, rock slide, sand tomb, stealth rocks, dig, sand golem. Obliteration cannon. Energy shield, iron bind, sunsteel strike, metal sound, gear grind, shift gear, electric terrain, rising voltage, steel roller, iron defense, wild charge, thunder wave, memory alloy. Rex was once again not surprised. The defense stats were simply not realistic. Nothing about this Pokémon should exist. Ability. The ability allows Mechagodzilla to negate the damage of any move that deals less than half of his defense or special defense stat respectively, 400. The damage that does go over will then be cut in half again before finally affecting Steelix. Rex was content. It explained who Steelix could tank even Zeus Thunderbolt. It took damage, but it was far from being able to deal enough to KO him. Especially with Memory Alloy, he simply recovered all of his HP again. Rex shook his head and sighed. He has just created a nightmare for all legacy holders. But he still thought that Machamp could beat Steelix if the latter sat there and took his punches without using its recovery move. After all, Machamp could punch 500 times in a second. Enough to deplete its HP. As soon as Steelix returned to his normal snake form, he was swarmed by Rex's other Pokémon as they looked at him with curiosity and awe. After all, they had witnessed a battle on a scale so large that it frightened them. After all, a power like that, only Machamp could contend against. Arcanine was a proud Pokémon, but it wasn't stupid. He knew that he would be no match currently. The defense of Steelix was unbreakable. He was simply unbeatable. They all gazed at the 1 kilometer zone that was left charred and desolate. Pieces of flaming bark could be seen strewn across the place, trunks of trees burnt black. Not a single blade of grass in sight. But they were no longer afraid. The more they looked at it, the more determined they became. They would one day reach this level and even surpass it. They too would climb the ranks of the elite and become unbeatable. They strived for it. They hungered for it. Rex and Machamp stood shoulder to shoulder witnessing this. What did you think of the fight? Rex asked. Currently, unless I use Descent of Olympus, I will not be able to beat Steelix in a million years. Machamp responded honestly. Rex didn't doubt him, he had witnessed the fight as well. Steelix, who had slowly made his way to Rex's side, nodded at Machamp's remark. What about you, Steelix? Could you beat Machamp? No, his ability is too broken. I would end up missing half the time. Plus, his damage reduction and increased strength and inability to miss his attacks. I could not beat him. We are at a standstill, he responded honestly. As it should be, that way, you can both act as my spear and shield. You will be the guardians upon which I will build my empire. We will decimate our foes and slay gods. Rex said solemnly. Machamp and Steelix nodded seriously as well. Anyway, enough with the serious atmosphere, it's time to celebrate the successful evolution of our two brothers. Rex yelled, catching everyone's attention. Everyone cheered and danced as they congratulated Steelix and Scissor. The entire day was spent drinking juice, dancing, telling stories and one final celebratory applause before falling asleep on top of each other. While Rex and everyone else was asleep, Machamp and Steelix left and met a kilometer out and stared at each other seriously. We cannot disappoint Rex. There is a big enemy coming our way, Steelix. Before I thought only Arcanine would be able to help, but now you can too. I will be counting on you to watch my back. Machamp said seriously. I got it. I'm happy to be able to help. You have been like an older brother to all of us. Rex has been the same. I would do anything in my power to pay back even a sliver of what he has given me. I have attained power so great that I would never have dreamt of if I wasn't living it. You can count on me, he responded. You're not forgetting about me, are you? Asked a crane with a cheeky smile. The other two smiled slightly and the three of them returned quietly and rested amongst the rest. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The next day rolled by incredibly quickly and with it came the continuation of their journey towards Fuchsia City, where he would not only meet Elisa again, but where he would be challenging his second last gym. There were many trainers on his way there, but he decided that there was no longer any reason to continue battling them. They no longer served to help refine his skills when he had the simulation the system provided. He only arrived at Fuchsia City 2 days later under a heavy downpour. But Rex didn't even mind it, he felt more alive than ever before. He not only gained another legacy tier Pokémon, but he also got more insurance against his opponent. He was no longer worried or pressured, he even felt a trace of excitement for what came. Because with his eventual win, Machamp would gain the full legacy. He had no clue what would happen when that day came, but he was sure that it would be insane. So with any and all pressure lifted off of his chest, he was left feeling light as a feather as he sped through the streets of the city. His white dress shirt and black dress pants were soaked through, revealing the shredded body beneath. He was packing serious muscle since last time. All that aura training had drastically increased his muscle density and strength. He had no clue how strong he was. Sure, he wasn't anywhere near as strong as Machamp, but he was sure he could kick the shit out of Ash's Charmander. The thought of it made him smile. He stopped at the Pokémon Center and took off his helmet to reveal the dashing smile and glowing blue eyes. His damp white hair stuck to his face, which he pulled back with his hand. He parked his bike and walked in, dripping with water, which he completely ignored. He could no longer get sick due to his enhanced body. Everyone stared at the new arrival with different expressions. Some thought he was weird for being drenched in water, so thought he was an idiot. Some thought he was hot, and then there was the emotionless Nurse Joy who held that ever-present smile. He wondered if it was real or if she faked that shit. He had never seen a Nurse Joy frown or show any emotion that wasn't a smile. It was somewhat eerie in a way. Exiting the Pokémon Center a few minutes later, Rex reserved a hotel room in the best hotel via the system. He decided to be more efficient than always having to go there physically. He instead headed towards the best restaurant in the city. 10 minutes later he arrived. The place was called Henry's Barbecue. It was said to be one of the best barbecue places in the region. He was excited to try it out. Upon entry, the smell of pork and beef being cooked assaulted his nose, making him drool. He saw a young man at the counter cooking his own meal. He had a barbecue station in the reception area. Let that sink in for a second. It was also a genius idea, it tempted customers, and the receptionist never got hungry. Rex was more surprised that the dude wasn't obese. But he didn't keep the thought going and walked towards the man in order to get a table. He also pulled out his phone and called Elisa. Asterisk ring asterisk asterisk ring asterisk asterisk ring asterisk. Hello. Rex. Are you here in Fuchsia City? Elisa asked excitedly. Yep, I'm currently at Henry's Barbecue. I was calling to see if you wanted to join me. He asked with a slight smile. What? You're here? What are the chances? I'll tell reception I have a guest. Just tell them you're with me, she said with joy and hung up. Rex stared at his phone with a raised eyebrow but shrugged it off and walked towards reception. Good afternoon, customer, how may I help you? Asked the young man with a smile. I have a reservation with a woman called Elisa, he answered. The man was stunned for a moment before nodding stiffly and typing away. Soon he raises his head again to look at Rex. Are you Rex Pierce? He asked. Rex nodded casually. Then you may go in, Lady Elisa is currently seated at table 32. He said while pointing at the door with his hand. Rex nodded and headed to the door under the envious gaze of the receptionist. When he walked through the door, the smell of food intensified and his stomach grumbled in protest. He raised his hand while patting his stomach slightly and scanned the room for Elisa. It didn't take long since she pretty much glowed. She was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. That face he had missed so much was seated only a few tables down. She was in a tight sexy black dress which was conservative but still made sure to accentuate her curves. Her raven black hair cascaded down her snowy white shoulders as her piercing blue eyes stared at him as if he was the only one in the room. Rex froze at that moment. An unfamiliar feeling rose in his chest, a feeling he had never experienced before. He couldn't take his eyes off hers, as they gazed at each other. Time seemed to freeze as they stayed that way for a good minute before Rex turned around and left under the stupefied expression of Elisa. Just when she was about to lose her cool, he walked back in with a massive teddy bear. The same teddy bear he had won for her at the fair. Elisa, who was seated, froze again. As she stared at the bear, her heartbeat rose, and she clutched her dress tightly as the unfamiliar feeling assaulted her even more intensely. She stared at the handsome face of Rex with unparalleled attention. She took in all his features. It was like he was become more good-looking with every step he took. Unable to hold it in anymore, she rose from her seat and walked towards him with restrained steps, as if sacred she would burst into a full-speed run. Rex was entranced at her figure, as if the gods had shaped beauty in her image. In an instant they stood there less than a meter apart, and yet, it felt like they were so far away. Rex didn't know what to do. Should he kiss her? No, that would be inappropriate in a moment like this, not to mention they hadn't reached such a stage yet. Elisa was thinking the same thing. For some reason, she wanted to hug him intensely and kiss him, but she clutched her dress even tighter. She didn't think it was the right time. I got you the bear you asked for, Rex said with a stupid smile in an attempt to break the awkward silence. Elisa smiled brilliantly. Rex swore the room got brighter. Elisa stretched her hand outwards and caressed the fur of the teddy bear before facing Rex. I'm so glad you remembered. Thank you, Rex. Come, let's take a seat, she said before walking back to her seat while holding his hand. Rex felt the soft warm sensation of her hand against his as a jolt of electricity ran between them. He didn't take his eyes off her back, as if searing the image of her figure into his mind. Never to forget. When they were seated, they resumed their silence as they simply stared at each other. There was no awkwardness anymore. They both knew something at this moment. Something that was impossible to deny. Something was pulling them together like a magnet. Their eyes glowed slightly as Rex leaned in and kissed her cheek softly. I think that should be enough for where we are currently, he said, and looked at his surroundings with an awkward smile. Yet Elisa didn't care in the slightest and leaned in and kissed him straight on the lips. Rex's eyes widened in shock and surprise before slowly enjoying his naive and inexperienced first kiss in this life. He didn't exceed his boundaries and simply enjoyed the moment as their hands intertwined with each other. They were lucky that the rooms were semi-private with high walls, with only one exit to a corridor. But as if realizing something, Elisa broke away in horror and held her mouth. Her eyes watered and she attempted to get up and leave only to be held down by Rex. "Did I do something wrong?" "I'm sorry," he asked with a slightly panicked look. Elisa looked at him in shock and shook her head. "No, the one who should be sorry is me. I did something I shouldn't have. Especially under my circumstances," she said as a tear slipped down her cheeks. Rex knew that something wasn't right and grabbed her hand before walking out of the room. Elisa was surprised. Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere that's not here. This is not the place for a chat," he said without looking back at her. He had no clue why he was doing this but hopped on his bike and handed her his helmet. "Hop on, I know where we can go," he said. Elisa looked hesitant. "Do you trust me?" he asked. Elisa nodded her head instantly as if out of reflex. "Then hop on," he insisted. Seeing the way he was looking at her, she couldn't refuse any longer and hopped on. Her body stuck to his and she held on tightly. Rex sped off towards the exit of the city and into the woods. About a kilometer in, he hopped off and stood there. This was the first place that came to mind. It really proved just how much he had grown to love and trust the forest. Elisa looked around and asked with puzzlement, "Why are we here?" she asked. "Because I didn't think it was appropriate for us to discuss personal issues in the presence of others. So, tell me freely, what is the matter? Did I do something wrong?" he asked seriously. Elisa shook her head with a dejected and sorrowful look. She opened her mouth in an attempt to deny everything. She was planning on leaving and never coming back. She didn't think it was right to burden him with something that didn't have anything to do with him. But before she could, a pokeball on her waist burst open and a big yellow bird shot into the air before landing in front of her. Zapdos looked intensely at Rex as if wanting to say something. Rex, understanding this, pulled out his own pokeball and threw it gently. But what came out almost made Zapdos faint in shock. Machamp appeared towering over Zapdos with his arms crossed. But he soon got a hold of himself due to the situation and started saying something to Machamp in a hurried and concerned tone. Rex, who noticed this, began to frown and looked at Elisa, who had her head bowed in shame. She was slightly shaking. Machamp, who finished hearing everything, looked at Elisa with a pitying gaze and then looked at Rex. He then proceeded to tell Rex everything. The more Rex heard, the more intense his frown became, and finally, a dark expression surfaced on his face. So evil and full of anger that it would make anyone fear him. But when he saw the tears streaming down Elisa's face, his anger dissipated like a dream. But a solemn expression remained. "I understand. You are being sold for money. If that is the case, then I have some choices for you. 1. You take one of my Pokémon and you go there and do what you see fit. The second option, I drown them in so much money that they won't dare look away. The third option, I destroy everything your father built. I can do that in an instant. And finally, fourth, I erase his existence from the face of the earth. Not even his ashes will remain," he said calmly. So calm, in fact, it sent shivers down Elisa's spine. Elisa looked at him in shock. "Why? Why would you go so far for me?" she asked with puzzlement as her red puffy eyes gazed at him intensely. Rex smiled. "Because I have the power to flatten a country if I so wanted to. Nothing and nobody will hurt or insult the people I care about. I have developed feelings for you. Simple as that. And that means that your concerns are now my concerns. Your problems are now my problems. That is how I live my life. My friends will never suffer while I can help it. That includes the person I like. Naturally, I would only go so far if the feeling was mutual. Which I am more than happy to know it is. He said with a slight smile. Elisa blushed deeply at his words, but a sense of warmth spread to every corner of her body. And a firm resolve flooded out. A serious expression dawned on her face. I will take the first option, although I would have preferred to do this on my own. I don't have the power necessary to go against hundreds of Pokémon at once while storming the house, she said seriously. Her expression then softened significantly and took a quick pause before speaking. As cliché and cringy as this may sound, from the moment I met you, I knew you were the one for me. I don't know how, and I honestly don't really care. I'm simply grateful that it was you. But that does not mean I don't have my own pride. I will do this on my own, but I will accept your offer as a backup plan. I am someone who does not want to live in the shadow of others. I want to stand next to you, shoulder to shoulder, not behind you. I hope you can accept that. She said resolutely. But a hint of worry appeared in her eyes. She was worried that he wouldn't accept that. Rex was stunned for a moment before nodding with a bright smile. I wouldn't have it any other way. Strong women are hot, he said with a cheeky smile. Elisa raised her head sharply in surprise as she stared at him. She couldn't help but smile brilliantly and proceeded to walk up to him and punch his arm playfully before hugging him softly. Rex patted her head as they turned to see Zapdos was in the corner shivering from absolute fright, as he looked at Machamp. No, this can't be. Why does this guy have a monster like him? Why did I have to meet him? He screamed in his mind. Machamp, who saw this, grinned and stared, teasing the poor bird under the chuckle of Rex and Elisa. Rex stared down at the woman in his arms and smiled contently. I finally have something else to fight for. You know, I just realized, Machoke is not so little anymore, said Elisa as she slightly leaned back to rest her head on his chest. Machamp, who heard this, briefly stopped bullying Zapdos and gave her a wide smile and a thumbs up. I can't win, can I? She said helplessly as she gave him a thumbs up as well. Rex couldn't help but smile slightly. Sadly, that is the case. Machamp is beyond the scope of a normal Pokémon. Every single one of my Pokémon are. But don't worry, I have a surprise for you, he said with a smile. Elisa was intrigued instantly, and like a curious little kid, she wanted to know instantly. She turned around and hugged his waist as she looked up at him. Rex really couldn't resist those eyes. I found a way to increase Zapdos's power dramatically. Let's just say, he will be much stronger than before. Maybe even enough to accomplish your goal, he said with a smile. Elisa's jewel-like eyes widened instantly in surprise. Zapdos, who was shivering in a corner, instantly perked up when he heard that and flashed before appearing in front of Rex with a serious expression. Will he be as strong as Machamp? She asked excitedly. Rex couldn't help but smile awkwardly. Sure, because creating God-tier Pokémon is a walk in the park, he thought. No, sadly that will not be possible, but he will be at least several times stronger than he is now. But it will be enough to fight Machamp for a little while though, he compromised. In theory that was the case. If the experiment went well, Zapdos could fare quite well against Machamp in normal mode. Zapdos was a bit disappointed, but he was still excited to get stronger. Elisa didn't seem the least bit disappointed since she was happy to be able to increase her strength. How will it work? She asked curiously. I will buy the necessary materials and I will do the process when I'm done with the 7th gym. There are still some little details I want to straighten out before I put Zapdos under. I don't want any mistakes to occur, he said seriously. Ever since he found out that Elisa had caught Zapdos, he had ordered the system to research a way to improve his strength. And finally, he got the answer he was looking for. But there was still some minute details that needed working on. That was why he needed to wait a bit. Elisa nodded joyfully and hugged him tightly before letting go and walking to the other end of the clearing. When she turned around, a determined expression surfaced on her face. Rex was surprised but smiled. He knew what she wanted. He really did like her determination. I won't hold back, he warned seriously. Humph, I wouldn't want it any other way. People grow through hardships, she said truthfully. Rex nodded and snapped his fingers. Machamp's playful smile disappeared, and a massive pressure descended down on them, suppressing Zapdos into the ground. Elisa was shocked and was also forced to her knees. Even she was being subjected to his pressure. If you can't even stay standing, then maybe you shouldn't go after your revenge, he said seriously. Elisa shivered slightly at his words and a trace of fury arose in her heart. With all her strength she pushed off the ground and was able to stand again. Barely. Zapdos roared with the dignity of a legendary and shot into the sky with a blast of air. Rex smiled slightly and crossed his arms. Maybe you have some promise in you after all, he mocked slightly. He was not playing around. He no longer saw her as his girlfriend, but as an opponent who was too weak to even touch his shadow. You can go ahead, he offered. Elisa knew what he was up to but simply nodded. Zapdos, this is going to be the hardest fight of our life. Give it your all. Do not hold back in the slightest, she roared with clenched fists. Zapdos, as if mirroring his trainer's resolve, exploded out with immense bolts of electricity and glared at Machamp with defiance. Like Rex, he had his arms crossed and scoffed slightly. A bug should know its place. By the end of this fight, you will understand what a god is, he said arrogantly. Rex didn't reprimand him. They had come to a secret agreement to try and piss off the other party into showing them their best. He needed to gauge accurately if she was actually ready to go on her mission. Zapdos was incensed at his words and flapped his wings harder. Even Elisa was a bit ticked off by their attitude. Zapdos, use Rain Dance, she yelled. Rex nodded. Good move, he thought. Zapdos took to the sky and released a ball of blue energy that instantly seeped into the sky, creating massive amounts of dark clouds that instantly released a downpour. Rex, not wanting to get wet, placed an aura barrier above his head and smiled mockingly at Elisa, who was getting drenched from head to toe. Elisa once again became even angrier the more the rain soaked her clothes. Zapdos, send them to hell, Zap Cannon, she yelled. Zapdos broke the sound barrier and soared into the dark storm and amasses an immense amount of lightning from the clouds and created a massive ball of blue electricity that became a beam of destruction that barreled towards Machamp at the speed of sound. That won't work, sweetheart. Use Protect, he said lazily as he sat down on a log casually with his legs crossed. Machamp raised his hand equally as lazily and sent out a barrier that easily took the hit. A massive cloud of smoke engulfed the surroundings that was casually swatted away by the Machamp's massive hands, revealing his intact image with a mocking smile. That can't be the best you can do, right? Rex asked with a smile. Elisa, who was beginning to slightly shake from the rage, somehow calmed down. The temperature lowered suddenly as a cold smile appeared on her face. Rex's smile widened. There we go, he thought. Asterisk rumble asterisk asterisk bang asterisk asterisk crackle asterisk. The sound of thunder and lightning reverberated across the battlefield as the downpour of rain continued to get even more intense. But all parties seemed to be unaffected as they raged on. Zapdos, use extreme speed into Volt Tackle, she yelled. Zapdos shone with blinding yellow light and vanished from sight like the flash. Only a trail of crackling lightning was seen. Rex was no surprised that she had used such a combination since he had used the same idea with a Cranin. Machamp, use bulk up and lean backwards, he commanded. Machamp's muscles began to bulge even more as power raged through his veins. Then he leaned back just in time to dodge the attack heading his way. Zapdos tried again and did a U-turn before blasting towards Machamp again. Shape your aura in the form of a net, please, he commanded. Machamp stood there and created a net out of blue energy that floated in front of the speeding Zapdos's trajectory. There was a weakness when using such high-speed moves. Their maneuverability suffered severely. They couldn't dodge to the sides because of their momentum. That was a fatal weakness and one that Zapdos was suffering from currently. It knew what was happening, but he couldn't do anything about it. No matter how much he tried to change his direction, no matter how hard he flapped his wings, he inevitably landed right into the net made of aura. The net, as if coming to life, instantly shrouded Zapdos. Good, now use Vital Throw, he commanded calmly. Elisa was working her brain trying to find a way out of the current situation. Machamp grabbed into the net and shot into the air before spinning and sending the net with Zapdos in it barreling into the ground. Use Protect, she yelled. Zapdos did as told and a shield appeared around him, cushioning his blow completely. Machamp, use Blast Cannon, please, he said. Elisa looked up in realization at the Pokémon still in the air. Half of the sky was filled with blue fire and the other with ice. 2 hands each, which doubled the power of the already busted move. Seeing Elisa's face, Rex smiled slightly. Maybe you shouldn't have used Protect so early, he commented just as the wave of immense air pressure shot down towards Zapdos at an insane speed. Zapdos, use Substitute and Reflect, she yelled quickly. Rex was surprised this time. Just as the wave of air was about to descend, Zapdos disappeared in a puff of smoke and a doll appeared in his place. Zapdos reappeared 100 meters away just as the attack landed but didn't stop. He cast Reflect quickly. Even though the doll was destroyed, Zapdos didn't get hit and even came out winning the trade. Rex was astonished. That was a very good play. Good, that's very good, let's take it up a notch. Machamp, use Bullet Punch. Machamp's 4 fists began to glow with a silver light before he turned into a meteor as he crashed downwards towards Zapdos. The speed was tremendous and in the blink of an eye, a crater was formed and a massive shockwave spread out in all directions. Zapdos was sent flying across the sky from the hit but recovered quickly due to the damage being halved. Zapdos, use Roost, she yelled. No you don't, Machamp, Master Bolt, he yelled. Machamp roared to the sky and a dragon made of lightning descended from the clouds and landed on his palm. A massive 3-meter-long lightning bolt was now in Machamp's hand that he sent shooting at Zapdos at the speed of sound. Boom! A massive plume of smoke appeared in the air before the image of Zapdos could be made out falling towards the ground. Elisa was shocked at the move and was beginning to doubt whether she was truly strong enough to meet Rex's expectations. Come on, you can't give in, you need to push harder, Elisa. Come on! Rex yelled in his head but continued to mock her aloud. Zapdos! She yelled, full of anger and determination. Her roar awoke the drowsy Pokémon, which stabilized itself before touching the ground. "Enough of this, we need to try our new move," she said seriously. Rex saw surprise and excitement flash across Zapdoz's eyes. He became interested in seeing what it was and decided to watch for now. "Use agility over and over again and flying into the clouds," she yelled. Rex frowned slightly in confusion but still kept silent. Zapdos roared and plunged into the dark clouds. Flashes of thunder and lightning could be heard from time to time as a shadow could be seen, painted on the clouds in those brief moments where the lightning lit up the otherwise dark sky. The sounds got louder and finally, a bird covered in trillions of lightning bolts appeared. "Now fly in a circle and use thunder on yourself repetitively," she commanded. Rex's eyes widened at the sight. Even Machamp became serious as the power of Zapdos was increasing linearly with every passing second. "What the fuck are you up to?" he mumbled to himself but tensed up the next second. A massive vortex of lightning grew with every revolution Zapdos completely. Millions of massive thunderbolts smashed into Zapdos and yet, he didn't even feel it, they were absorbed by the tornado being made of lighting. A few moments later, the body of a dragon formed as its massive head coiled back before releasing a thunderous roar. Zapdos, who was inside the head, looked at Machamp with a grin. "Use Roar of the Thundering Dragon," she bellowed. Rex was astounded by the move, the beauty, the power, the design. He couldn't help but burst into mad laughter. Legendaries weren't so useless after all. Even if it did take a century to prepare, the move was marvelous. "This is it, Elisa, this is what I wanted to see. This power, yes, you are worthy of me going full out," he shouted, catching Zapdos and Elisa's attention. They were shocked at his words. He wasn't going all out, they thought at the same time. "Machamp, I think we can let loose a bit. Use Radiant Series, Guardian of the Storm," he yelled. Machamp's roar boomed out, causing the land and air to shake. Under the stupefied gazes of Zapdos and Elisa, Machamp grew to 15 meters. His forearms became 6 and the clouds swirled before shooting out blue lighting that collided with his body. A set of samurai armor appeared on his body, a massive golden ring appeared in his hand in contrast to the sword he had before. Elisa broke out of her stupor and became solemn when she saw their transformation. She was even shaking slightly from Machamp's majesty. "He's been hiding this much power all this time. That feeling I felt a week ago was actually from him. Monster. But I can't let this end here. I cannot lose without injuring him," she screamed in her head. Zapdos felt her emotions and the lightning surrounding his body turned red from his rage. The dragon became red instead of blue. Rex, who was seeing this, was stunned for a moment before smiling brilliantly. "Damn, this is going to be epic," he thought as he saw Zapdos descend at the speed of sound. "Machamp, you know what to do," he said quickly. Machamp nodded and swung his arm in a circle, making the ring rotate so fast it created a golden barrier. Then there was silence. The two attacks collided, and the blast expanded outwards and collided with the shield of aura created by Machamp and Rex. There was only a blinding light that entrances both Elisa and Rex. Boom! A massive cloud of smoke exploded outwards, covering every inch of the battlefield as sparks of lightning snaked across the plumes of smoke. It looked like an electrified storm. Rex's eyes sparkled as he saw the scene before him. He was amazed at the power of Zapdos. How could it be hiding so much power? And he was even more surprised when he realized how short of a time frame they had been together. It was almost like these two were fated for each other. It was insane. As the cloud of electrified smoke raged on, swirling like a tornado, a massive golden ring shot upwards, expanding and enveloping the circumference of the tornado. That was when Rex's face returned to being neutral as a small, confident smile graced his face. But that is all it amounts to, sadly. Nothing can rival my unstoppable spear, he thought. Wheel of reincarnation. He bellowed at the top of his lungs. An earth-shattering roar sounded out from the center of the tornado, like a million war drums beating in unison. The sound of something shattering could be heard before the golden ring increased in size by tenfold, bursting apart the cloud of smoke from the sheer size. It then descended on the weakened Zapdos, who was exhausted from his move just now. It could only look at the incoming attack helplessly and close its eyes in resignation. Stop! Rex! Stop! You'll kill him! Elisa yelled, as if time itself froze. The attack that was about to hit Zapdos stopped a meter away from his head and slowly dissipated into light particles a few moments later. Machamp, who was completely untouched, waved the remaining cloud of smoke away and carried Zapdos in his oversized hand with a warm smile on his face. Rex came forward soon after. Sorry, I got carried away in the heat of battle, he said while scratching the back of his head. Elisa didn't respond and instead made her way to Zapdos, who was unconscious for the battle. Don't worry. The yellow pigeon is simply exhausted from overdrafting his power. Machamp mocked slightly as he shrank to normal size, only to get a tight slap to the arm from a furious Elisa. She glared at him furiously. Don't you dare belittle my Zapdos. He has worked far too hard to be bullied like that, she reprimanded. Machamp was stunned and turned to look at Rex, who was backing away slowly and silently. Machamp was infuriated but grinned the next moment. He turned to Elisa. You're right. MHM, you're completely right, but it's all Rex's fault. After all, I was raised by him, he snitched, pushing all the blame to Rex, who froze at his words before mechanically turning his head with a red face. He was about to lose his temper when he saw the infuriated expression on Elisa's face that scared him slightly. He knew better than to antagonize an angry woman. Sorry, I'll teach him better. He apologized immediately. Only then did Elisa calm down slightly. Rex then turned to the snickering Machamp and glared daggers at him. Watch your back, he transmitted via his telepathic link. He still couldn't use it on other Pokémon. That still required more training. Machamp shrugged dismissively and flipped him off. Anytime, boss man. Rex could only sigh and stand there until Elisa was done with whatever it was she was doing. It was only about 5 minutes later when she stood back up and recalled Zapdos before facing Rex. Thank you for this eye-opening battle. Even with a move like this, as you can see, it drains Zapdos of all his energy. I'm hoping that whatever power-up you'll give him will allow him to use this move consecutively, she asked. She was no longer angry and returned to her usual joyful self. Rex started sweating slightly. That move he pulled was already insane, and she wanted him to allow Zapdos to spam it. That was ludicrous. With a sigh, he could only accept and say he would try his best. Great. Now, let's go back to eating. We have to celebrate getting together after all, she said while skipping towards Rex and giving him a kiss on the cheek before locking her arm with his. Rex's lips twitched. Why were her mood swings so severe? He couldn't do anything but smile slightly and then recalled Machamp back to his Pokeball under his cheeky smile. They quickly returned to the restaurant and had the best dinner of their life. It really was like that TV commercial at the table, we laugh, share and love. Eating good food with good people is everything. They shared their stories. And even though Rex didn't want to lie to her, he would under no circumstances tell her about the system and his reincarnation. That was a taboo subject. So, he told her the most convincing story possible. He was raised in an orphanage in Colossus and grew up watching the league tournaments. He swore to one day reach the top. And he decided that Kanto was the place to start. He then went to explain his daily life, which he went into great detail with the help of the system. It was like reading off a script. He really hated lying to her, but it was the only option. So, in the spirit of compromising, he tried to cut his story short, keeping it brief and having her talk about her life instead. She instantly changed topics and began to tell him about her life. She was born in Nimbasa City. She had 2 sisters who were much younger than her, who were also born to a different mother. But she never looked down on them or hated them, since they shared the same fate: to be exploited by their father. Elisa was forced into the fashion industry by her father due to her good looks. She was only grateful that she loved what she did, which made it bearable. But her sisters didn't like it. Mainly because they wanted to be trainers. But they couldn't be. But she seemed to not want to talk too much about that part and skipped to her fashion career. She revealed that she had a deep friendship with the gym leader Valerie, who is also a clothing designer in Colossus. She explained that she loved the clothing that she made and that her only regret in their friendship is she couldn't help Valerie with her business. After all, fashion was a very fickle thing. Investors and sponsors were the lifeblood of a fashion designing company. Without it, they couldn't advertise their clothing and it could prove to be a bust. Rex was intrigued by that prospect. But he would leave that for another time. He already had a lot of things he needed to do for his business. He really couldn't afford to add any more workload. She then continued to talk about her gym and how fun it was to be one. Her goal was to be strong enough to reach the Elite Four, which she might be with Zapdos as her Pokémon. Maybe by the time he reached Unova, there would be a change in the Elite Four or even the champion. It would be an interesting prospect. Their chat continued, and before they even noticed it, it was closing time. Rex and Elisa made their way out and stood on the footpath staring at the starry night sky. Rex wanted to take her to his room, but they were already moving quickly. Any more, and it might prove to ruin the meaning in their relationship. They looked at each other and understood this. They both wanted to make this work. Sexual relations could wait. That wasn't the important thing right now. Taking it slow and cementing their feelings, boundaries and such were what they needed to do at the moment. So, with a simple yet profound kiss, they separated ways, with each one heading in the opposite direction. Rex walked down the empty footpath with his hands behind his head and a silly smile on his face. The next day rolled around quickly, and Rex woke up with a wide and joyful smile on his face. He had the best sleep of his life. Getting up off the bed, he went over and got dressed in his usual white dress shirt with the top 2 buttons undone. He also had his sleeves rolled up neatly and wore black dress pants. As he stood in front of the mirror, he looked at his appearance and nodded contently. He liked his untidy white hair, since combing it would simply be too much. With that out of the way, he walked out of his room and pulled out his phone to call Elisa. *ring****************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************** voice. "Hey! What are you up to?" she asked from the other end of the call. "I'm just about to leave the hotel and head to the gym. I was wondering if you wanted to join me. To see you battle." "Of course, I would love to." Let me get dressed first and I'll meet you outside the gym, she responded happily. Okay, see you there, he answered and hung up. But he couldn't help but let his mind wander at her previous words. He imagined her figure naked in the shower and his face turned beet red. Asterisk par asterisk. TCH, get your mind out of the gutter, Rex, you horny fuck. That time will come, that time will come. He convinced himself as a fire raged within him. He left the hotel quickly and hopped on his bike and sped towards the gym that was on the other end of the city. It only took several minutes to get there. Upon arrival, he saw Elisa standing there in a yellow summer dress. Conservative but adorable to look at. It was vastly different from the sensual dress she had yesterday that made him want to tear it off. This one invoked a sense of bliss and comfort. Truly the skill of a veteran fashion model. Parking his bike right in front of her, he saw Elisa coming over with brisk steps and hugged him as soon as he hopped off his bike. After a short greeting, he took his helmet off and headed inside with Elisa in tow. The inside of the gym was the same as any other. Polished white floors, black walls with wood to spice it up. The reception was made of a bamboo material which was interesting. When he walked in, he saw a young woman about his age manning the desk typing away. She had black hair and red eyes with a red scarf around her neck. She noticed the duo's entrance the moment they walked in. "How can I help you today?" she asked with a neutral face and tone. She didn't seem to be much of a talker. "I'm here to challenge the gym," he responded succinctly. The woman nodded. "My dad is currently free, you can head directly inside for the challenge. You may head upstairs to the viewing platform," she informed as she looked at Elisa for the second part. Elisa nodded and pecked Rex's cheeky quickly. "Good luck, even if you don't need it," she said sweetly and hopped off towards the stairs like a little girl. Rex couldn't help but chuckle slightly and walk straight through the sliding doors. What came into view was a bamboo forest littered with small boulders and thick stalks of bamboo that shot to the roof. It was definitely not a battlefield for a big Pokémon. Not long after he stepped in and began to observe the field, a man walked in. He seemed to be in his mid-40s by the looks of it. Short black spiky hair, a red scarf like his daughter, and a tight black suit on that didn't hinder any of his movement. "Welcome to my gym. My name is Koga and I specialize in poison-type Pokémon. May I ask how many badges you have?" he asked with a stone-cold face. "6, this is my second last one," Rex responded. Koga nodded slightly and picked the second case that was behind him. Rex speculated that the two cases were meant for different levels of trainers. Some started out in this city, so he had to have a weaker team. But he also needed to have a stronger team for challengers who had defeated more than several badges already. "I will be using my main team. It might seem overkill, but you are nearing the league tournament. It is only right that you face a new obstacle you can't immediately defeat. So, in the event that you do not succeed, do not falter. You can only grow from defeat," he advised. Rex didn't take offense or disagree. He learned the hard way via the system that being beaten did in fact help him improve. Even now, he was still getting his ass kicked in the simulations. "Thank you for your words, but I don't plan on losing," he said calmly and confidently. Koga nodded. He had said everything that needed to be said. Actions spoke louder than words. As their conversation ended, as if on cue, Koga's daughter stepped out and stood in the referee position. "This will be a 3-on-3 Pokémon battle. The challenger may substitute his Pokémon, but the gym leader cannot. The battle will finish when either side has no more Pokémon standing. Ready? She asked while looking at Koga. The latter nodded. Ready? She repeated, looked at Rex. He nodded. Then, let the battle commence. She yelled and slashed her hand down quickly. Beedrill, go! He yelled while throwing a Pokeball into the air. His choice surprised Rex since this deviated from what Ush versed. But then he realized that Koga probably understood that Ush wasn't that strong and used his weak Pokémon. Even when Ush had defeated all the other gym leaders. Well, defeat was a strong word. But in any case, the choice didn't matter. Time to show me how strong you have become after evolution, Scissor, let's go! He announced excitedly. His Pokeball was sent out and burst open with a blinding light before Scissor took the field. His appearance stunned everyone. They had never seen a Pokémon like this. Even based on the name Rex had announced, they could see the similarities, but the overall appearance was still miles apart. Koga turned extremely serious when he felt the razor-sharp aura exploding out from Scissor. Elisa leaned forward and rested her chin on her hand as a faint smile graced her lips. I didn't expect anything less from you, she thought. Beedrill, use toxic spikes. Koga commanded of the bat. Rex nodded, that was a good move. It would poison the target, and if he had a bulky or tanky Pokémon, he could stall and let the poison kill. Naturally, he knew that Koga didn't rely on this as a gym leader, but it was smart. Scissor, use Swords Dance. Rex commanded with a slash of his hand. Scissor clinked his sickle-like arms together as illusory swords hovered around him. Instantly his attack was boosted by 2 stages. Koga grimaced slightly. He didn't know how strong this Pokémon was, but letting it use Swords Dance was a bad trade on his part. But he didn't mind it that much since he secured a good chance of poisoning future Pokémon Rex sent out. Beedrill, agility, go! Swish swish swish. Dozens of after-images were left in Beedrill's wake before coming to a stop. It had become much faster. Scissor, blazing scythe, let's go! Sheeing. As if a sword had been drawn from its scabbard, Scissor shot forward with massive amounts of sharp energy floating around him like a cloud of mist. Beedrill, use harden and parry his attacks with your arms. He commanded quickly. Rex was surprised at the versatility. Beedrill was known to have strong steel-like arms. Further reinforced by harden. It might be able to parry the hit. But the key word there was might. Boom. 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 The 2 Pokémon clashed. One was like a flaming sword, and the other was a sturdy lance. But the winner was decided in an instant. Beedrill shot backwards and struggled to maintain itself in the air. Its defenses had been breached. It was like a sheet of paper trying to stop a cannonball from exiting the muzzle. Rex was surprised Beedrill was still conscious after that attack. It seemed that Koga had trained this one to be defensive. Scissor, use Psychic Scythe. He commanded. Scissor changed typing again and became a psychic type and shot out sharp blades of purple energy towards Beedrill. Koga noticed the minute change that happened when Scissor changed typing. This is my opening, he exclaimed in his mind. Beedrill, use agility into poison jab. He ordered. Beedrill flapped its wings at immense speed as waves of air burst out in every direction before becoming an after-image. Rex naturally knew what he was going for. Scissor, use metal scythe on the ground quickly. He commanded. Scissor did as told and slashed downward, creating a massive horizontal slash mark that spanned the entire width of the battlefield. And just as he did so, Beedrill appeared and instantly stung Scissor right in the back with a purple-tipped stinger. Scissor shot forward and tumbled on the ground before shooting into the air with his jetpack and hovering there. Koga was stunned by the ineffective move and at the jetpack that was on Scissor's back. It was all so new to him. This was the first time it had seen such a Pokémon. Beedrill Rock Smash, let's go. Scissor, dodge and use Blazing Scythe. Beedrill slashed downwards from top to bottom in an attempt to hit Scissor's head. But the latter shot to the left with his jetpack before sending out a searing hot blade that collided with Beedrill instantly. Boom! Beedrill smashed into the floor as a cloud of smoke filled the surrounding 10 meters. Scissor landed back in front of Rex and quietly waited for instructions. Dozens of bamboo shoots had been sniped, burnt or cut clearly due to the fight just now. The area had opened up considerably. Koga's daughter raised her hand in Rex's direction. Beedrill is unable to battle, Scissor is the victor, she announced. Koga smiled helplessly and recalled the unconscious Beedrill to his Pokeball. You did good, pal. Rest easy, he whispered to his Pokeball before looking up at Rex. What a strong Pokémon you have there. I really couldn't get through to it in the least. May I ask what its ability is? Rex didn't mind and told him it was Protean. He didn't mention the other ability. I see, that explains why the moves did so much and why even though he was Psychic type before, the poison jab was ineffective. Okay, Crobat, come out, he yelled. Instantly a big vibrant purple bat came out and flew in the air like a silent killer. It didn't make a single noise as he flew. His four wings made it fly fast and its ability to change directions was incredibly smooth and immediate. Rex wasn't as surprised this time. This was a real team. Not that Venonat bullshit Ush faced. Rex recalled Scissor since he wanted to let Gyarados have a shot. He had not battled in a very long time. He was waiting to find a Mega Stone for him before conducting his experiment. After all, Gyarados was a powerhouse. Simply having a Mega Evolution wouldn't compare to his other teammates. Pop! The entire gym started to shake as the thunderous roar filled with anger and might exploded outwards. A massive 15-meter-tall blood-red Gyarados covered in water floated there glaring at the fear-stricken Crobat. Koga, who saw this, frowned deeply. Why does he have so many monsters? He asked himself. Crobat, no time to waste, use Screech and Tailwind, he commanded. Gyarados, use Rain Dance please, Rex countered. If they were both going to set up, then so be it. As for the Screech, humph, who would care about the petty little cries of a four-winged bat? Clearly not Gyarados, who was completely unaffected by it as he shot a ball of blue light up towards the high ceiling. Instantly, dark clouds formed and a heavy downpour drenched everyone except Rex, who was covering himself with aura, and Elisa and Koga's daughter, who were both under cover. Koga, who was now drenched in rainwater, didn't seem to mind as he cupped his chin with his left hand and pondered over what to do. But why would Rex give him the chance? Even though Koga had some very strong Pokémon, it was unrealistic to think they could cope with the onslaught of his. Gyarados, Eye of the Storm please, he commanded. Elisa, Koga and his daughter perked up at the command. This was a new move they had not heard of before. But before they could even speculate about what it could be, a massive typhoon began to develop inside the gym. The rain began to turn violent and even hurt slightly from the velocity at which it was revolving. Rex put up an aura barrier for everyone in the gym, including Koga. After all, this was a battle against Pokémon, not people. But talking of which, Crobat was struggling to even maintain its position. It was having an increasingly hard time holding on. Koga knew this, and that was why he was frowning. Crobat, fly with the storm and increase your speed. Koga shouted his command. Crobat stopped resisting the pull and instead embraced it as he began to fly faster and faster. Being boosted by tailwind helped increase his speed even more. Soon, only a purple blur could be seen amongst the raging rain. Rex didn't know what he was up to, but it didn't matter. Poseidon's crush, he commanded. Gyarados roared out, causing the sound waves to boom out and make the gym tremble. Amongst the storm, a massive hand began to form. The hand began to press down from top to bottom with increasing force. It was like the sky was falling and nothing could be done to stop it. Koga couldn't just sit there and do nothing. By now, Crobat had broken the speed of sound. Use Giga Impact, Koga yelled. Rex's eyes twitched slightly, no wonder he was flying in circles. It seemed that he was building up momentum before launching it toward Gyarados at full speed. Like a rocket from a missile launcher. But now, all that build-up was used to defend against his attack. He couldn't help but nod to himself. If he allowed Koga to execute his plan without a hitch, it might have dealt severe damage to Gyarados. As the two attacks collided, an explosion of light and water shot in all directions. For an instant, everyone was astounded by the beauty. Like a sea of stars, the light was refracted from the droplets of rain that spread in all directions. It was a mesmerizing scene. But eventually, it disappeared and, in its stead, Crobat was on the ground struggling to get up while Gyarados was fine. After all, Giga Impact dealt recoil damage to the user. Gyarados, Hydro Pump. Boom pshhhhhhhhhhh. The incredibly thin jet of water that could cut through solid steel shot towards the still grounded Crobat. Crobat, protect! Koga yelled quickly. Instantly, a translucent shield appeared around Crobat that ate the hit. But the power behind it sent it shooting into the wall. Gyarados, use Tsunami! Rex commanded with a grin. He improved the move Surf and boost its power using Rain Dance and Gyarados' control over water. And this was a result, a towering 20-meter-tall tidal wave that ate everything in its path like a ravenous animal. Koga paled slightly before a shield enveloped the area including him. Boom! Crash! Swoosh! The water churned and swirled as it crashed against the barrier. Crobat took the entirety of the hit and instantly fainted from the magnitude of the damage dealt. Koga looked at the barrier around him and then at Rex with a surprised look. The water vanished and only Gyarados was left on the field. You have mastered Aura? He asked. Rex smiled slightly. I have indeed. He responded. Koga nodded and looked at Crobat, who was unconscious with a helpless expression. That last move was simply not something he could contend with. He recalled the fainted Pokémon and took out his final Pokeball. As he looked down at it, he couldn't help but reminisce. How long has it been since I last used you in a battle, buddy? He asked himself with a smile. But as if sensing its trainer's thoughts, the Pokeball rattled slightly, causing Koga to laugh slightly. Gyarados is the winner, Koga's daughter announced. Rex recalled Gyarados and pulled out his last Pokeball. As the two trainers looked at each other, both smiled and threw their Pokeballs out at the same time. Pop! Pop! Gigegegegegeg! Creepy laughter echoed through the destroyed room as a dark purple, almost black Jenga took to the field. Rex was astounded. This was a very powerful Pokémon in its own right. He then looked at his Pokémon, a black shadow, with burning green flames on its head and fists as it eyed Jenga with intense battle intent. Koga was equally as surprised when it saw another new Pokémon. His opponent was full of surprises. But under the stupefied gaze of both parties, Marshadow's eyes wandered before locking onto Elisa and her voluptuous figure. Marshadow began to drool at the sight and wiped it unconsciously without averting his gaze. Rex forgot that this little pervert had a certain naughty nature. He stomped forward and slapped him across the head. "Oi! Take your eyes off of my girl. Don't you even dare even think about anything perverted, or I'll have Machamp beat you to a living pulp, you hear me?" Marshadow, who was about to use his ghostly powers to satiate his evil desires, froze suddenly. There were two things in Rex's sentence. First, this gorgeous woman he was staring at was Rex's mate. And the second made it shudder. Remembering the towering demonic instructor, he shivered even more and mechanically turned to the battle he hadn't been paying attention to all this time. His head and fists blazed even more as he stared at Jenga. He had to beat the living shit out of this idiot to release his sadness. The sadness of missing out on such a sight. It really hurt his soul. Rex, who saw how sad Marshadow got, shook his head in embarrassment and helplessness. He was getting more perverted by the day. He had to have Machamp teach him a lesson. Otherwise, it would eventually lead more serious offenses. He didn't care that Marshadow peeped at women or whatever he did. But one, not his women, and two, he had to know his boundaries. He began to massage his forehead since a headache was starting to appear. "Jenga, use thunder," Koga commanded. Rex nodded. Smart move to play with the still active rain dance to maximize the accuracy of the move. But Rex wasn't going to stay still. Marshadow, use agility and acrobatics. Marshadow dashed to the left using agility to evade the massive thunderbolt that came barreling down from the dark clouds above. Then it did some cartwheels and front flips and landed in front of Jenga before smashing into it with a strong knee to the stomach area. Jenga was forced to slide backwards while hugging its stomach in pain. But the barrage was far from over. With a flash, Marshadow disappeared and reappeared behind him before doing a low sweep that kicked Jenga's legs from under him. Koga, who was seeing Jenga get thrashed, couldn't let this continue. Just as Marshadow went in for a punch, Koga yelled, "Now fly up!" He commanded. Jenga, as if awoken, levitated into the air suddenly and avoided the devastating punch. With no target, all of a sudden, the punch landed on the ground, creating a small vibration that developed into a miniature earthquake that shook the gym. After all, acrobatics was a move that doubled the power if the user wasn't holding an item. "Quick, use agility and get close," Koga yelled. Jenga also flashed and appeared behind Marshadow like a reaper. Rex raised an eyebrow. "Marshadow, use Shadow Punch," he commanded. But when Marshadow swung his fist over, all he hit was an after image. Zhangda was above him. Jenga, hypnosis. Instantly, a silent wave of energy rippled out of Jenga's head and landed on Marshadow. Before it could do anything, he was already in a deep sleep. Rex knew where this was going. After all, he had fallen for it once before. Next up was surely Dream Eater or Hex. And that was what happened. Jenga used Dream Eater to gain back his health. And unluckily for Rex, Marshadow only stood there dumbly continuing to sleep. Rex grit his teeth slightly. There was nothing he could do. He couldn't use telepathy since Marshadow still hadn't reached the stage of mastering aura. And Rex himself wasn't good enough yet to use telepathy on any Pokémon he saw. He could only pray that Marshadow woke up soon. Koga on the other hand was ecstatic and made sure to capitalize on this rare opportunity. Jenga use hex. Clang. 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 Purple chains shot out of the ground and bound Marshadow before they exploded. Instantly, a cloud of smoke and dust filled the air as Marshadow was seen shooting out the side, leaving a trail of smoke behind him. Boom! He smashed into the wall where he stayed unmoving. Rex, who saw this, tried to calm down and assess a way to awaken Marshadow. And a rare and honestly ridiculous idea came to mind which he tried to squash but halted the next moment. Maybe it's worth a try, he thought to himself before cupping his hands around the sides of his mouth to increase the volume of his voice. Marshadow, if you wake up now, I'll let you roam the city without supervision for a day, he yelled. Soon, an awkward silence filled the gym. Rex's face was beet red at this point out of embarrassment. Everyone understood that Marshadow was a pervert, so they naturally understood what Rex was insinuating. Elisa, who was in the stand, was giggling non-stop. She tried to muffle her laugh with her hands but failed as her stomach started to hurt. Rex, with his super hearing, naturally heard her and looked at her with a reproachful gaze, as if saying, "Should you be supporting me?" Elisa gave him a pitying look before continuing to laugh again. But she was cut off when a massive beam of green light shot towards the roof. This caught everyone's attention. As they looked over at the beam of solid light, a small hand stretched out, followed by another hand, then a foot and finally a head that was burning with vigor. Rex was stunned. Did he just go Super Saiyan? He asked himself. It was only logical. Marshadow was covered in green flames from head to toe, his eyes burned with golden flames as his chest heaved up and down like a crazed lunatic on crack. Before anyone could react, a shockwave spread out and Marshadow was gone. Where he stood, a massive crater was formed. Boom! Smash! Bang! It all happened too fast. Before anyone could even understand what was happening, Marshadow had dashed across the field at a speed far surpassing the speed of sound and decked Jenga right into the ground, creating another crater. But that was far from the end. Marshadow picked Jenga up by his head and tossed him into the air before beginning a barrage of supersonic punches. He transitioned between Fire Punch, Thunder Punch, Ice Punch, Shadow Punch and Focus Punch, all at a speed too fast for the naked eye to receive. It was all over in a matter of a second. All they saw was Jenga being smashed backwards repeatedly by himself as if he was being shot by bullets. Before long, Jenga was seen in a massive pit on the ground at least 5 meters deep. At the rim of the crater, Marshadow's chest was heaving up and down at a fast pace as if more adrenaline was being pumped into him. Like someone was overwinding him up before letting him loose. Marshadow slowly turned and gazed at Rex as if asked him to keep his promise. But Rex was too stunned to even register what happened. He was too shocked at the sudden outburst. What kind of speed and power was that? He then got a prompt from the system that shocked him further. System has picked up traces of a legacy within Marshadow's body. But it is missing something, like a piece or a key. This legacy is unlike that of normal ones. The system believes that it is hidden somewhere. The system speculates that it might be located in the dimension Marshadow used to get to this region. I suggest the host sends Marshadow there to obtain it, it revealed. Rex was flabbergasted. The system clearly told him that Marshadow wasn't able to get a legacy. But now it seemed that it was possible. Was it due to the outburst from earlier? Correct. Energy levels spiked. It was as if he was about to evolve, but something was missing result in this happening. It is recommended that Marshadow travels back to the mysterious domain and obtain the legacy. Why can't I go with him? This domain, based on the readings the system has gathered, is shown to only support ghost-type Pokémon. Any other life form that doesn't conform to this will be cast out or destroyed. The host cannot enter. What does he need to do to get the item? How do you know it's an item? He asked. It is not definitive that it is an item. Maybe it's a requirement. An intangible one. But Marshadow, due to being the only one that can search for it, must find it by himself, it said. Rex sighed. This was a large revelation. And it seemed he would have to part with Marshadow for the time being. He didn't know how long it would be for, but there were still 1 or 2 months before the league began. So, he hoped it would be completed before then. He then looked at the glowing green Marshadow, who was also looking at him. Rex beckoned Marshadow over with a wave of his hand. Marshadow calmed down and the burning green flames shrouding his body dissipated as he gazed up at Rex questioningly. I will keep my promise. He paused, but during that pause, Marshadow began to dance and cheer with a lustful face. Rex grimaced at the sight and begged forgiveness from the people he will be harassing. But you need to be quick, since I have a special, very important mission that can increase your strength by dozens of times. He mentioned with a wide grin. As expected, Marshadow froze on the spot and mechanically turned his head towards Rex with a starry gaze. Do you remember Machamp, Arcanine and Steelix? Their transformations? He asked. Marshadow nodded immediately. How could he forget something so terrifying? But he also hungered for such power like all of Rex's other Pokémon. Good, well, I have found a way for you to achieve it, I said. He paused again as a solution to his headache appeared in his mind. A way to stop Marshadow from defiling some random woman on the street. Again, as expected, Marshadow was shocked to his core before he began to tremble slightly. He was so excited he had trouble controlling himself. Calm down. There are some things I need to tell you. Now, do you want to go have your fun? Or would you rather we get back to the hotel where I can tell you how to get stronger? He asked while holding back a smile. Marshadow seemed to think about it seriously. After all, both things were important to him. But he decided to go against his perverted desires and seek to get stronger. Although Rex couldn't understand what decision he had made based on words, he could, however, understand based on the gaze Marshadow had. It was no longer playful, but serious. Rex sighed in relief inside his mind and couldn't help but praise his genius. A bit conceited of you, the system chimed in, pouring a bucket of cold water over Rex's happy mood. Damn it, can't you let me enjoy myself, he complained. No. Fuck you, he grumbled angrily. As Rex and the system were having their little argument, Koga had already recalled his Pokémon and pulled out his badge case before picking out a purplish-pink heart. He then walked towards Rex, which caught the latter's attention, pulling him away from his intense argument with the machine. Here is the soul badge. Proof that you have beaten my gym. You have great potential and amazingly strong Pokémon, he said while gazing down at Marshadow. Rex naturally nodded. He was immensely proud of his team. Then he thought of something and pulled out a Pokeball. With a pop, Victreebel came out and observed the surroundings carefully before standing by Rex's side. Koga was puzzled but focused on the killing intent Victreebel was exuding. This was a frightening Pokémon. That was his assessment of it anyway. I was wondering if you could give me your input on an idea of mine concerning poison, he said with a smile. Koga was instantly intrigued. They spent an hour discussing the use of toxic and how the poison inside of a Pokémon can be augmented using different types of poisonous plants and materials to increase their potency even further. They even hypothesized whether different, specific materials could add different properties, like odorless, transparent, and whether they could add paralysis effects through the poison or even sleeping effects where they are both poisoned and paralyzed. The more they talked, the more Koga was amazed at the depth of the subject. By the end, he even felt deeply ashamed of calling himself a poison expert. The man before him could easily take the mantle without contest. But they both benefited from this. Rex got a more detailed hypothesis down that could serve to improve Victreebel's poison. And Koga found a new way to improve the lethality of his poison Pokémon. After they were done with their chat, Rex walked back through the sliding doors and out the gym entrance with a hand around Elisa's waist. Koga didn't even pay attention as he began to madly pace around thinking of ways to increase the potency of his Pokémon's poison. Koga's daughter couldn't help but sigh and walk away, leaving her father madly mumbling to himself. Rex walked down the street aimlessly, enjoying Elisa's company. "So, what are you going to do now?" Rex asked. "I think I'll take care of my issue with my family and meet you in Viridian City," she said with a tinge of seriousness in her voice. Rex nodded. He wanted to get everything relating to Marshadow out of the way before heading to Viridian City himself and taking on the final gym. That, and finally taking down Team Rocket once and for all. Once they were out of the way, he would chase after Mewtwo, since that was his final Pokémon for his Kanto team. The system had already determined the best way to cure Mewtwo of his illness. And that was his leverage. Well, that and beating the living crap out of it twice to assert his dominance to entice Mewtwo into joining his team. Who doesn't like the prospect of getting stronger? With a solemn look, Rex took out a Pokeball and held it up to his face. "You will be protecting Elisa until she is done with her business. Please listen to her instructions. But don't intervene unless she is in dire circumstances," he whispered. The Pokeball shook intensely as if consenting to his command. But Rex also felt unwillingness from it. Rex also didn't want to part, but it was necessary to protect the woman he loved. He then looked at Elisa, who was staring at him intensely. She had heard everything he said. "This Pokémon is strong enough to level a country. Only use him when you have no option left. He will protect you like an iron wall. An unbreakable shield. Please be safe on your journey. I will be awaiting your return in Viridian City," he said while handing the Pokeball over to her. She felt an incomparable weight. Even though she understood it was all psychological, she couldn't help but have cold sweat run down her back when she heard the introduction. The Pokémon in this tiny Pokeball had the power to destroy countries. What sort of concept was that? But then an incomparable sense of warmth surged into her heart. To give her such a Pokémon, even if it was only temporary, really demonstrated how much he cared for her. And she couldn't let him down. She promised herself that she would not use this Pokémon. That she would prove to him that she was worthy of standing by his side as an equal. Or at least as close to it as possible. Rex, seeing her serious expression, found it incredibly cute and couldn't help but play with her cheeks and ruffle her hair. Elisa pouted and inflated her sore cheeks and stomped her feet angrily. "I have finished figuring out how to help boost your Zapdos," he said, which instantly diffused the angry Elisa. She immediately brightened and smiled brilliantly. Great, great. Let's go, she said quickly, skipping in a random direction. Wrong way, he said, pointing in the opposite direction. Elisa laughed awkwardly and turned before skipping in the direction he was pointing in. Rex couldn't help but be slightly scared. Her ability to change her mood on a whim was a spooky ability. Maybe he should push her to be an actress. And cheers to Defiant Sage and the Master for the idea about enhancing the poison thing. Very much appreciate it. Please keep it going with the ideas. As you can see, I am more than willing to listen and incorporate them. Rex and Elisa exited the city and went deep into the forest area on his off-road bike. It took about 20 minutes to arrive at the destination the system had marked as optimal. And Rex soon found out why. There was currently a massive storm rolling in, and they were currently right underneath it. Hopping off the bike, Rex took Elisa's pokeball and called out Zapdos, who already knew what was going on. Rex pointed at the open area. Stand there, I'll get everything ready soon, he said, and stopped paying attention to the bird. He pretended to reach into his bag and took out 2 electrolyzers he had bought online the previous night. Luckily, they didn't seem to be incredibly rare, and he was able to get his hand on 2, which was the recommended amount set by the system. Electrolyzers are boxes packed with a tremendous amount of electric energy. Although they originally items used to evolve Electabuzz into Electivire, the system had naturally found a way to adapt it for Zapdos's evolution. He then took out 4 lighting rods and stabbed them into the ground in a square formation around Zapdos that instantly attracted the ire of the lightning from the clouds above. Instantly, the rods were slammed with endless lightning bolts that got Zapdos excited as it absorbed them. Rex didn't mind, since it wouldn't matter what he did with it. Finally, he got thunderstones and shiny stones. Why the shiny stones? Rex didn't know either, but they held an immense amount of light energy inside of it, and the system said it was compatible with Zapdos, so he went along with it. He placed 1 thunderstone and 1 light stone next to each other in between the gaps of 2 rods. He did the same for all other sides and the formation was complete. All he had to do was place the 2 electrolyzers in front of Zapdos and have him absorb the electricity inside, and the process would begin. Rex did exactly that and stepped back while holding Elisa close. Then he placed an aura barrier around the entire place in a square-like fashion, but left the top open so that the lighting from the clouds wouldn't be stopped midway. Zapdos, you can start absorbing the electricity whenever you're ready, Rex shouted. Zapdos looked at the weird devices in front of him. He felt immense energy stored inside, radiating out. But it seemed that only electric types could feel it. He didn't have much to think about. He wanted to get stronger. Machamp was able to swat him away with total ease. Even his final attack didn't even leave a scratch. No, more like it didn't even touch him. He was disappointed and frustrated. With a blaze in his eyes, he immediately began to absorb the energy in the devices hungrily. In doing so, he initiated the evolution process. Elisa looked up at Rex with worry. Will he be okay? She asked. Rex patted her head slightly. Don't worry, your electric chicken will be more than fine, he teased, which made Elisa pout cutely. It seemed she was really attached to the bird. Rex nodded internally. The closer their bond, the stronger they would become. Their attention was soon sucked back into the evolution process. Massive arcs of white, pure lightning shot out in all directions as all the stones were affected. The lightning rods kept all the energy focalized on the small area, making the energy pulse as if it was alive. The concentration of it was immense. Soon, a massive bubble of light was created as the stones turned into liquid and flowed inside before seeping into Zapdoz's body. Instantly, massive changes were occurring. His wings began to spit slightly, the overall shape of his wings turned into an X shape with his left and right making the entire shape of it. The lower half of his wings turned completely golden and shone with immense light. His tail feathers also grew some extra golden ones to match his wings. On his head, 2 streams of pure golden lightning formed, as if horns on his head. They looked like smoke but stayed in a single shape. His body bubbled up. From his initial 1.6 meters, he was now above 4 meters. His muscles bulged and arcs of golden lightning crackled along his body like snakes. Boom! The sound of thunder and lightning could be heard in the sky, as the bubble burst apart and a holy radiance spread out in all directions. In the sky, Zapdos hovered, golden light seeped out of his body as golden lighting shot in every direction. The clouds as if stained by the sun turned golden, and bolts of white lightning shot down to the ground smashing everything in sight. Elisa and Rex were amazed at the beauty of it. For a second, Zapdos looked like an angel descending from the sky. Rex instantly scanned Zapdos. ****. Name, Zapdos the Archangel Pokémon. O Ancient DNA status, unavailable. O Type, Electric, Fairy. O Level, 60. O Bond, 95%. O Height, 4.3 m. O HP, 350. O Attack, 470. O Defense, 340. OSP. ATK, 660. OSP. Definite, 340. O Speed, 600. O Ability, Divine Lightning. O Moveset, Zap Cannon, Thunder, Thunderbolt, Thunder Wave, Agility, Protect, Rain Dance, Volt Switch, Substitute, Reflect, Light Screen, Steel Wing, Giga Impact, Hyper Beam, Acrobatics, Aerial Ace, Roost, Thunder Spikes, Electric Terrain, Moon Blast, Misty Terrain, Misty Explosion, Dazzling Gleam, Death Angle's Kiss, Roar of the Thundering Dragon. Rex was amazed. The stat increase was big, and he even got a new ability and new moves. Explain everything to me please, he said in his mind. Rex and Elisa exited the city and went deep into the forest area on his off-road bike. It took about 20 minutes to arrive at the destination the system had marked as optimal. And Rex soon found out why. There was currently a massive storm rolling in, and they were currently right underneath it. Hopping off the bike, Rex took Elisa's Pokeball and called out Zapdos, who already knew what was going on. Rex pointed at the open area. Stand there, I'll get everything ready soon, he said and stopped paying attention to the bird. He pretended to reach into his bag and took out 2 electrolyzers he had bought online the previous night. Luckily, they didn't seem to be incredibly rare, and he was able to get his hand on 2, which was the recommended amount set by the system. Electrolyzers are boxes packed with a tremendous amount of electric energy. Although they originally items used to evolve Electabuzz into Electivire, the system had naturally found a way to adapt it for Zapdoz's evolution. He then took out 4 lighting rods and stabbed them into the ground in a square formation around Zapdos that instantly attracted the ire of the lightning from the clouds above. Instantly, the rods were slammed with endless lightning bolts that got Zapdos excited as it absorbed them. Rex didn't mind since it wouldn't matter what he did with it. Finally, he got thunderstones and shiny stones. Why the shiny stones? Rex didn't know either, but they held an immense amount of light energy inside of it, and the system said it was compatible with Zapdos, so he went along with it. He placed one thunderstone and one lightstone next to each other in between the gaps of two rods. He did the same for all other sides and the formation was complete. All he had to do was place the two electrolyzers in front of Zapdos and have him absorb the electricity inside and the process would begin. Rex did exactly that and stepped back while holding Elisa close. Then he placed an aura barrier around the entire place in a square-like fashion but left the top open so that the lighting from the clouds wouldn't be stopped midway. Zapdos, you can start absorbing the electricity whenever you're ready. Rex shouted. Zapdos looked at the weird devices in front of him. He felt immense energy stored inside, radiating out. But it seemed that only electric types could feel it. He didn't have much to think about, he wanted to get stronger. Machamp was able to swat him away with total ease. Even his final attack didn't even leave a scratch. No, more like it didn't even touch him. He was disappointed and frustrated. With a blaze in his eyes, he immediately began to absorb the energy in the devices hungrily. In doing so, he initiated the evolution process. Elisa looked up at Rex with worry. Will he be okay? She asked. Rex patted her head slightly. Don't worry, your electric chicken will be more than fine, he teased, which made Elisa pout cutely. It seemed she was really attached to the bird. Rex nodded internally. The closer their bond, the stronger they would become. Their attention was soon sucked back into the evolution process. Massive arcs of white, pure lightning shot out in all directions as all the stones were affected. The lightning rods kept all the energy focalized on the small area, making the energy pulse as if it was alive. The concentration of it was immense. Soon, a massive bubble of light was created as the stones turned into liquid and flowed inside before seeping into Zapdos's body. Instantly, massive changes were occurring. His wings began to spit slightly. The overall shape of his wings turned into an X shape with his left and right making the entire shape of it. The lower half of his wings turned completely golden and shone with immense light. His tail feathers also grew some extra golden ones to match his wings. On his head, two streams of pure golden lightning formed, as if horns on his head. They looked like smoke but stayed in a single shape. His body bubbled up. From his initial 1.6 meters, he was now above 4 meters. His muscles bulged and arcs of golden lightning crackled along his body like snakes. Boom! The sound of thunder and lightning could be heard in the sky, as the bubble burst apart and a holy radiance spread out in all directions. In the sky, Zapdos hovered. Golden light seeped out of his body as golden lighting shot in every direction. The clouds, as if stained by the sun, turned golden, and bolts of white lightning shot down to the ground, smashing everything in sight. Elisa and Rex were amazed at the beauty of it. For a second, Zapdos looked like an angel descending from the sky. Rex instantly scanned Zapdos. ****. Name: Zapdos, the Archangel Pokémon. O ancient DNA status: unavailable. O type: electric, fairy. O level: 60. O bond: 95%. O height: 4.3 m. O HP: 350. O attack: 470. O defense: 340. OSP. ATK, 660. OSP. Definite, 340. O speed, 600. O ability, Divine Lightning. O moves: Zap Cannon, Thunder, Thunderbolt, Thunder Wave, Agility, Protect, Rain Dance, Volt Switch, Substitute, Reflect, Light Screen, Steel Wing, Giga Impact, Hyper Beam, Acrobatics, Aerial Ace, Roost, thunder spikes, electric terrain, moon blast, misty terrain, misty explosion, dazzling gleam, death angle's kiss, roar of the thundering dragon. Rex was amazed. The stat increase was big, and he even got a new ability and new moves. Explain everything to me please, he said in his mind.